Hi, everybody. Welcome to the tutorial, except Ringo this morning.
Adam.
If you're here to learn something, Ringo is an asshole. Moving on.
Wow. If you're here to learn something, my computer blue screened. Like last night.
I don't know
So
why I
this
care
week-
about that, but okay.
Long awkward silences, but
Long, awkward silences that I can edit out.
moral of the story is I need more RAM.
A moment of silence.
Moment of silence.
Moment of
for
silence for
Chunky
Ringo's
Kong.
fucked up computer.
All right.
Moment of silence for Chunky Kong.
No.
What did I do?
What the fuck was that?
That was the necromanced remains of Chunky Kong.
It's funny because that's kind of what my computer sounded like when it blue screened yesterday. I tried to play PC Building Simulator. I tried to play PC Building Simulator and my computer fucking blue screened.
What was that, Zeta?
Is that actually a thing? PC Building Simulator?
Diarrhea.
Yes, PC Building Simulator is a thing. I also have it.
I think the simulator game genre needs to have some.
It needs to stop. Yeah.
I don't know if it needs to stop, but it needs to start having like boundaries
regulation.
Across.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you guys, some kind of fucking fascist?
No.
Regulate the simulation.
I mean, if life is just a simulation anyway.
Life is just a simulation anyway. Why did I end up spawning in such a shitty part of the world?
Why did we, of all
This is one of
times
the
and
best parts of
places,
the
have to
world.
be born now?
All right,
Why
Why
do I have to start at level 0? I want cheat codes. Give it to me now.
Why does it take me so much damn time to level up to level 1? I still haven't hit it, and I'm 27 years old.
Godzilla had a stroke trying to read this and fucking died.
Nice.
We didn't roll
I
for
wasn't
initiative
sure how to
yet.
react.
That's true. We didn't. We're just talking shit.
Oh fuck. I need to find. I forgot that this podcast makes me break out my fucking D&D dice.
I
I
kind of also forgot. If we hadn't said something, I would have completely I don't know.
All right, mine's
Ratio.
a 5.
Stop. I just got a notification popped up on my phone that was like, sleep in today. And Linda was like, yes, let's do that. No, stop.
So Dave got a 5. I gotta roll
And I'm
twice.
apparently the only one who has reported my number.
I got a 16.
16, Jesus.
Ringo got a 17, and I got a 14.
What the fuck? How?
because you had advantage this week.
I guess I had advantage
guess.
this week.
So
Well,
I guess we're gonna
guys.
start with.
So I think it's Ringo, Zeta, myself, and then Dave.
Yeah, I talk last.
Well, guys,
Probably best.
I don't really.
It's the funny thing about Ringo. He doesn't read because he's a loser.
So instead of talking about a book per se,
I gave him a special exception for this week before you guys say anything because he doesn't read like a normal person. So
I'm gonna talk about the Berserk Manga.
He's a what do they call it? He's an unscholarly, unlearned loser.
he's the one that goes into like the grandest library in the world and finds the picture book.
Yep.
The scholar.
Ooh, pretty colors.
Yep. That's Ringo.
Oh my god, so many different types of cats.
So
What?
books.
So,
All right, so Berserk Manga. I guess we're talking
Berserk
about
Manga.
that.
Talk about that
Unironically.
paper.
I mean, that counts as reading at least. I'll give him that.
Yeah.
yes,
It
I
does.
have read,
It does.
I read 363 issues of it, so
Oh my god.
Wow.
Why?
That's almost
There's
as
not
many.
a single mod.
That's almost as many issues as you have, Ringo.
Much.
Some of them were kind of the same as others, and it was really confusing.
It was
But-
man have sword kill other men.
No.
Man,
I mean, like the app that I was using had like the whole first half of the story twice, and then I just read it again.
yeah, you're like, I feel like we've done this before.
They're like reboot.
Reboot.
Reboot,
Uh,
but don't change anything at all.
We changed the
Yeah.
art
Is there
style.
a show called Reboot.
We changed the art
Probably.
style. We went from using a 3.5 millimeter
Like a
pen
terrible 3D
to a-
animated
to
show
a-
that makes Arrow
to a
Troopers look like it was well
4.0
done.
millimeter pen.
Also, just really quick, rest in peace to Miura Kentaro.
Yep.
Yeah,
I don't know who that is.
that's
The creator
guy
of
that
the
wrote
Berserk
Berserk
manga.
Yeah,
Okay.
he died. He died.
Does that mean all his characters died?
No.
Ah, damn it.
Well, no, but I
You know-
kind of understand being respectful of that because there are some animes and mangas I've read or watched that the creators died, and I was really sad.
Also, Berserk is one of the things that influenced shit like Dark Souls.
That is true.
That is actually, yeah, a thing. So sadly, the story was getting to a point where it felt like it was gonna wrap up soon, and then the guy died. So it was like,
So we
like-
will never have that closure.
yeah, it's like we
Well, I
got like,
believe the studio continued it to a conclusion, I think, or has plans to do that.
well, so far I haven't gotten any more chapters on my app. But what's it called? It starts off with the Golden Age, which is like before shit
Pre-demon.
goes crazy. Yeah, pre-demon.
The golden age.
Wow, I actually thought that was David because of how bad it was.
I'll take that as a compliment.
Fuck you.
Anyway, it starts off in what is called the Golden Age, which is that's the name of the story arc, which it tells you about, like, it tells the story of Guts, the main character, if any of you didn't know that, which I'm pretty sure you all did. It tells the story of Guts when he is a young mercenary.
When he was a young warthog.
When he was a young DMCA.
Guys, my arm is like bruised really bad from donating plasma yesterday. So I don't know if they're gonna let me go back on Tuesday. Well, I might have to use the other arm. Anyway, I don't know
That
why I
has to
brought
do
that
with the
up.
Berserk manga. I have no idea, but okay.
I
Well, you
get
see, there's this
distracted
one
easily.
issue of the Berserk manga where Ringo has ADHD.
Yeah. Anyway, so it starts off with the Golden Age, and it tells a story of Guts when he was a young mercenary. And it kind of sets the scene of like, okay, so he's just showing up different places. He's just going places and picking up jobs. Because presently there's a 100-year, there's a war going on that has been going on for the last 100 or so years at this point, between the kingdom of Tudor and
And the Kingdom of Farter.
no, I forget what the other one is called.
They couldn't agree on what to call the
Hold on.
ejection of air out one's ass.
No,
Hooters,
it's-
rooters, tutors, computers.
It's like that.
And toaster strudels.
Okay. Great. Yep.
Sorry, I know we're making some fun. I don't want to turn this into what happened to me with Arrow Troopers. So.
Yeah, I'm also just trying to.
Arrow Trooper.
I'm just trying to pad some time a little bit. Is all I'm doing.
Midland. That's the other one.
Oh,
Midland.
Midland.
Yeah.
Oh my
Oh, I
lord.
thought-
So that isn't inspired by Norse mythology at all.
Mid-lips or
Anyway,
Middle Earth. I
And-
mean,
and appar-
Midland.
and apparently it's actually Tudor, and not Tudor.
Tudor?
Tudor.
Tudor. That's where all the dumbasses live.
Actually, yeah, because they're the ones that lose the war. So.
Oh my
Wait,
god.
hold on. What's the name of this country?
Tudor.
Tudor.
They have a diet of eating doors.
Tudor.
Tudor. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Chewing on the doors.
Anyway, Midland is the important one. It sucks that I forgot that one, but oh well. So it starts off. Guts is presently at the beginning of the story working for a nobleman of the kingdom of Tudor, and he's defending a fort that's being attacked by the army of Midland. The army, or actually, it's being attacked by the Band of the Hawk on behalf of the army of Midland. The Band of the Hawk is important, very important. I'll talk about them in a second.
So important, we're not going to talk about him.
With a guy who looks weirdly kind of a bit like a chick, but is totally
Yeah, so
good, and he has a
so-
rapier and he stabs people.
so it starts off with
And he
like,
turns into an angel, and then he turns into a demon, and then that's the story.
No, he never turned into an angel. He just turned into a demon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But he looks
just
like
called
perfect
himself an
angel boy.
Well, yeah, but I'll get to that later. There's a lot of fuckery with that.
I think
Fuckery
that was
will get you
done on
everywhere.
purpose. I'm relatively
No.
certain that was done on purpose to talk about how like the dude who looks like the good guy isn't always the good guy, but
Yeah, no, it probably was. But it starts basically by showing, oh, this main character, he's actually pretty good because he beats this guy that everyone's like, oh, that guy's unbeatable, so he beats him in like 2 strikes, but he at the same time, if he had made a slight fucking mistake more, he would have also died. So, but then he's leaving. He collects his
that'll
coin.
work.
He collects his coin, and the fucking nobleman's trying to hire him as a permanent knight. He's like, I'll give you rank, money, power, and shit. And Guts basically just tells him to fuck off because he's not interested in that.
This is like miscommunication.
He's like, my contract here ended yesterday. I'm leaving. Bye. And on his
The
way
goodness
out,
of my heart,
bitch.
I
out of the goodness of my heart, I have collected my money, and I will now leave.
out of the goodness of my heart, I stayed an extra day to help you defend against
Suck my
undefendable-
guts! That's what I call my dick. Bye.
Wow.
Oh no!
Bye.
Oh no!
Oh
Alright,
no,
so-
what?
So he tells him to fuck off and miss me with that shit. And...
Right. He tells him to fuck off, and then when he's leaving, he gets ambushed by a couple overly cocky members of the Band of the Hawk, and he kills 2 of them, like instantly, because they're dumbasses. And they're like, "Oh, this guy just killed the guy that everyone said couldn't be killed. Let's go kill him." And then he fucking kills them. So
Yeah, because that's like tertiary character logic.
yeah,
Yeah,
well, that's
also,
exactly what it is.
anyone
Those
who's
characters
uninitiated-
existed for like 2 pages.
For anyone who's
In the first
uninitiated
issue.
in the story of Berserk, the idea is that there's not really anything particularly special about Guts. He's just like, we all have that one friend who seems like mildly above average strong. That's Guts.
Yeah, actually. And he hates his life.
Yeah. I mean, he's got a right to. He's like the OG edgy backstory fighter.
Yeah, he got touched when he was little. His adoptive father sold him sold his body to somebody.
And also, his mother died, and
Oh
then gave
yeah, and
him.
also his mom died at childbirth. He was
No,
born.
no, she
No,
died,
right.
and
She
then he
died
was
and
born.
then gave. She was hung from a tree. She was pregnant and hung from a tree, and she died. And then he fell out of her after she
Yeah,
was dead. So
her
he was
body
born from a
relaxing its
corpse.
muscles mid labor is how he was born.
Yeah, he
Because
was
he died.
born from a corpse.
Yeah, that sounds like an edgier backstory than the rogue.
That
Yeah.
is, oh boy, oh Jesus! I don't know how you get more edgy backstory than that.
Yeah.
Like, holy shit,
Uh,
dude!
He was
Yes.
born from a corpse. His surrogate father pimped him out against his will.
And also forced him from a very, very young age to run into battle with him.
Mhm.
And basically, at first, it was just like, give me my sword, give me my spear, stuff like that. And then eventually, he started training him to fight when he got big enough. And then, what's it called? He started killing people when he was like 10 years old.
Yeah, the first blood on his hands was very young. He's
Incredibly young. So he's very desensitized to that. So
But the funny thing is, the main bulk of the story, Guts is mostly he's very just like, I don't care. I'm just trying to feed myself and take care of myself. He's not
Yeah.
like overly edgy. He's very human in the sense of somebody who went through all kinds of this shit would really act like this. They
Yeah,
wouldn't be some like
he
edgy
genuinely, for the most
fuckwad
part of
that
the
is
story,
stupidly overly self-important. He's
uh,
very much like, I'm jaded to the world's problems because all I can do is survive.
yeah, for the most part of the story, he's just trying to and he keeps. There's all kinds of people that are like, "Oh my god, you're so amazing! Take me with you," and he's like, "No, because I don't want your death to be on my hands." Because he's got shit going on. So after that incident with the Band of the Hawk, he gets one shot KO'd he gets parried and riposted by the leader of the Band of the Hawk, whose name is Griffith.
I may be remembering this incorrectly, but I'm pretty sure that's where the Dark Souls parry sound came from.
I don't know.
There was some sound that played when he got riposted, where it was supposed to. It was just like,
it was like a in the anime, yeah,
it's
but
just like no one's ever riposted me before, so it was just like, oh shit moment.
yeah,
But that was how we ended up with the in Dark Souls.
that sound actually, the riposte sound, not the parry sound, but yeah. And then he falls unconscious because he was already injured at that point.
Oh shit! Your character has a model now.
You know, your typical movie.
He woke up in the camp, in their camp. Oh, one of the people that tried to that I skipped over kind of an important detail. The two people or the three people that run after him at first end up getting backed up by the second in command character, who's a woman. And
Oh yeah, her name is Nebraska or something like that.
Yeah, Casca. Her name is Casca.
Her
She's
name is-
very important later
Her
too.
name is Costco? Okay.
Yeah, Costco.
Yeah, you have to have a membership card to enter.
Yeah.
More like Costco.
Yeah, but while he's unconscious,
Wow.
I think he was unconscious for like 2 days or something like that. But Griffith, the leader, made Casca, the woman, lay with him, so he wouldn't freeze to death.
And that's not like the joke that I just made. He just means bodily heat.
Yeah, just body heat. He actually ordered her to do it. But then he wakes up in the camp, and she comes up and fucking slaps him in the face, and he has no idea why, but that's why. And then Griffith shows up and takes him away up to this hill, and then Guts demands a rematch, and they beat the shit out of each other, but Griffith wins. And then he's like, "You belong to me now, Guts," with his fucking girly face, his incredibly feminine face.
Griffith is the original trap.
Oh, it's funny. It's fucking hilarious because it's fucking hilarious because in the manga, there's literally he says, "What are you, homo?" Where in the fucking anime they cut that out because they're like, "Oh, we can't have that. That's not, you know."
That's not
But it's
family
like-
friendly.
But it's like one of very
LGBT.
few. It's one of like very few things like that because
I wanna go off on a tirade about how we should be allowed to show that
well,
not every world is perfect like ours, and especially if we're doing a period piece, we need to be true to what was going on in the
Don't worry.
period
Don't worry.
and not shy away
Our
from it.
dear listeners are going to get to hear me talk about Huckleberry Finn. So we'll get there.
I was gonna
Okay.
say like,
Ah,
play The Witcher.
lovely.
yeah.
Also play The Witcher, yeah.
One
There's
of
a
the
reason it's so fucking good.
one of the other ones.
I started playing The Witcher. I never finished it though.
Hold on. One of the other
We'll read The Witcher because that's a thing too.
one of the other moments like that one where he says some like homophobic shit.
I mean,
says
he's
it-
the edgy character, so being like, "What are you gay?" is like perfectly up his alley.
Yeah, true. To be fair, he's fighting a monster, a demon, and the demon's like, "Are you sure you're a fucking real person? Like you're real strong, or whatever." And this was after he got the berserker armor, and he says this.
He's gonna
Look-
put it
look
in
in the
chat.
chat.
He's not
Yeah, look in
gonna
the chat.
actually-
He
And he'd
says,
be like, "Are you coming on to me?"
Oh.
No,
Okay.
think I'm
I
doing
see
the
why
right
we
thing.
wouldn't want to say that.
yeah, that's some shit,
Hang
ain't it?
on. I gotta get there. I'm like, wait, I was doing some archiving in the chat.
that's actually one of my favorite frames from the manga. Actually, is that one
Oh, because of homoerotic.
because of the first part where it says "fuck you, I'm human, I'm the real deal," right down to the fucking marrow of my bones. That's the part that I like.
Yeah, that do be sounding like the edgelord thing to say.
Yeah,
It's because they're all of them are naked.
but anyway, where was I? Yeah,
I think I'm gonna
So
have
he-
to. I don't know what Zeta just said, but I think I'm gonna have to edit it out.
Yeah, there you
yeah. Anyway, so
go.
he joins the Band of the Hawk. He
Chug.
he goes it's a mercenary group, right? So he joins the mercenary group. They go on to fight in the 100-Year War on the side of Midland.
Nebraska. You're the one who reads it.
He's with them for I think 3 years. He becomes the leader of he becomes the raider captain.
Captain
and
Guts.
And then eventually, at some point, he decides after they win the war, he decides I don't want to do this anymore. I'm gonna go off on my own. And
Yeah, he's like, I want to go like eat bread when I'm not thinking about all the people I've killed.
yeah.
I want to get this bread.
Anyway,
No,
so
he's like, I'm done getting bread. I need to eat it now before it goes bad.
there's some important stuff that happens in between these 2 points, but
Yeah, you sort of glossed over the fact that Griffith has the Baelet and his whole like mythological.
right. You know what? I should probably mention that. Yeah. So Griffith has this talisman that is like an egg with a face on it, but all the parts of the face are like scattered around. So like the eye is on the side of the head, the nose is on the fucking back of the head, shit like that.
if Picasso was contracted by a demon to make some sort of crazy thing.
Right. And basically what it is it's an amulet that allows you to sacrifice something important to you in order to raise yourself in order to save yourself from death and raise yourself to the level of quote unquote angel, which is in this world just a demon that's like an arrogant demon basically. But yeah, so they do some fighting, they go on raids. Actually, I should also mention when they meet Zod.
It's a question really quick.
Yeah, Zod's
So-
the guy
so-
that what you just posted. That's he says that to Zod. I'm pretty sure.
No, Zod says that to him.
Oh yeah, Zod's the first demon he ever
Zod's
fights.
Zod is the first demon that they encounter, which they Guts goes in to fight by himself because he's like, why are my men not coming back? By the way, he's very like, when he's a part of the Band of the Hawk, he is concerned about nothing more than the life of his men, and he is willing to go out on his own and fucking die for them. So
Which the funniest part about that is until he's like, all right, I'll do it myself. His care for his men sort of forces him to become a brilliant tactician, so that he can minimize deaths on his own side. I have no idea what you just said.
I'm gonna ask a question though. So in this manga anime, angels and demons are the same species. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, in Hebrew mythology, they are as well.
Yes, I understand that too. I'm just saying, like, is this
So
how it's
basically-
portrayed? They're just different groups of the same people.
listen, there's a group called the God Hand, which is comprised of 5 members who call themselves angels.
I believe they call themselves the archangels.
Yes, when in fact they are just very powerful demons.
Because
Okay. So in other words, angels as a separate thing don't exist. Angels
Yes.
is just something people believe exists.
Yes.
So when
But then-
these people say that they're angels, people believe it because they're powerful enough to make it seem like it is so.
Right.
Dope. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was understanding that concept correctly.
I'm an angel. My name is Chucky.
During the Golden Age arc, demons exist on a different plane, except for Zod and maybe a few others.
Yeah, Zod got left behind in the mortal world for some reason. He's sort of like
Yeah.
a curmudgeon.
So
I don't want to deal with this bullshit.
anyway, back to the story about when they met Zod, and he told them, because Zod is actually the one that tells them about the bailiff. Bailiff.
Zod's like,
Bailiff.
I was gonna say the bailiff, huh?
Get out of my courtroom.
Bailiff.
Get out of my
Pete.
courtroom.
Bailiff, Griffith, go to jail.
Well, he should, and he did actually.
Yeah, and then he got treated like shit.
Anyway. But basically, they go to do a raid on this castle, and a bunch of Guts men go in, and he stays out as, you know, he's the general, and he's like doing all the captain. Well, he's acting general, yeah. And he does all the like fucking. Actually, I think the rank that they gave him was commander. It was either captain or commander. It was one of the C's.
Captain Guts.
Very certain.
No, it was definitely commander. I remember because they always would come up to him, Commander Guts. Yeah,
Commander Guts.
What a name!
But what's it called? A bunch of
Is
his
he
men
called
go into
Guts
the castle.
because he fell out of his mother's guts?
I don't know. That's just what his fucking surrogate father called him, was Guts.
He's got a whole lot of guts to be alive.
Oh,
That's actually sort of the joke.
his surrogate father, by the way, his name is Gambino.
And he's not childish. He's just a dick.
Well, he's a little childish, but not in that way. He's just an asshole. But yeah, so a bunch of Guts men go in and they don't come out, and Guts is getting increasingly impatient and concerned. So he decides, fuck it, I'm gonna go in there by myself. And he tells his men, don't follow me, and don't tell Griffith, and don't go get backup. Do not, just no matter what happens.
Don't be little bitches and don't be little snitches, basically.
Yeah, don't be little bitches and don't be little snitches. So he goes in and he finds mountains of dead bodies of his comrades, and it's kind of like freaking him out. And then he gets to this big room where there's this very large man with a curved sword. Anyway, there's a very large man there with a big sword, and he turns and he's got presently a dude impaled on his sword, and then he turns around to look at Guts, and then he's got like a fucking ogre face, and then they start fighting, and Guts is getting his ass kicked, till at one point he manages to pierce him in the shoulder with his sword, and then he transforms and fucking transforms
Well,
into this
you
demon form.
missed the part where Zod gives his whole like crotchety old man speech where he's like kicking Guts' ass, and he's like, "Hey, you're pretty durable for a human."
Oh
That's
yeah,
that's
yeah,
really funny."
yeah. He does. He says something along the lines of like most other men would have died in with one strike of my sword or whatever. But the whole time Guts is fucking crabbing himself, and he's like, if I miss, if I don't block any of these swords, I don't have, because he's like, this guy is strong and fast, and he is the strongest. he's,
He's
so
like, "Nah, I'm not."
he's like, I am gonna fucking die here and shit like that. And
Yeah,
he manages to,
I've totally finally bitten off way more than I could chew.
yeah, he manages to land a strike on Zod, and Zod transforms into
Sounds
his
like
full demon
sounds
form.
like phase 2.
Yeah, boss fight phase 2. Yeah, literally. And then he's like, he becomes really obsessed with Guts, because he's like, more. I want more. I want to fight somebody who I can actually have a combat with.
Yeah, he's this recurring character where like he kind of shows up every so often, and his entire goal is to make Guts as strong as possible so he can have the most satisfying fight with Guts before killing him.
So he's
Because
like
nobody
Speed
wants to-
Speed of Sound Sonic in One
Um,
Punch
Yeah,
Man.
it's
That's
no.
a somewhat better attitude.
Not exactly.
Yeah, no. Speed of
It's
Sound
like,
Sonic.
he's like a crotchety little boomer instead of some like weird. I don't even know what I would call the guy.
Speed of Sound
Edgy
Sonic
femboy.
just exists to be defeated.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, like,
he's sauce.
the difference is, I think, that
The difference is Zod can actually kill Guts.
the similarities, I think, is like
the power scale.
Zod has like a weird obsession with Guts, and Sonic has a weird obsession with Saitama. And I think in both cases, the hero character really does not want to be the target of the other character's obsession. Like,
Yes,
all.
but for very different reasons. For Saitama, he's like, "Ugh, this guy's so annoying." For Guts, he's like,
Yeah,
"I'm gonna
true.
fucking die."
Yeah. So eventually, Zod's beating him down, and he gets very much the upper hand. And then backup arrives in the form of a bunch of the rest of Guts' men and Griffith. And so him and Griffith proceed to.
I think Griffith was the one who gave that order because Guts told his men, "Fucking don't."
Well, Griffith is the leader of the group. He's the
yeah. So I'm
he's the
thinking
general.
he's the only one who could like outdo Guts' orders.
Yeah.
Like if Guts gave them orders, don't do this, and then Griffith comes along and says, "No, fuck that order. Do it anyway."
Yeah. So they come in with crossbows and shit, and they start shooting at Zod, and Zod gets really mad because how dare they interrupt his duel. So Griffith, who is the only person other than Zod who could ever defeat Guts at this point, Griffith and Guts engage in combat with Zod, and they are both getting their asses kicked. And then Zod manages to knock Griffith unconscious, and he notices the amulet that he has around his neck, and he kind of staggers at it for a second, and he looks at it, and he's like, "No, this can't be." And then he looks to Guts, and he's like, "You should know that when this man's ambition fades, and you two are." When this, I don't remember the exact words, but it's something along the lines of, when this man's ambition fades and you call each other brothers, death will be upon you, something like that. And then he leaves.
He basically predicts the Dark Age.
Yeah. And then he leaves. So they take Griffith back or whatever, and then moving forward a lot of while, they win the war for Midland. Midland wins the war. They have like celebration for it in Wyndham, which is the capital city. And then Guts decides he wants to leave. But before that happens, I should also mention, Griffith has him go on like an assassination mission to kill the Duke. I forget what the guy's name was. So Guts goes in there. He kills the Duke, and then the Duke's very young son opens the door and is like, "Dad, Papa, what's going on? I heard a noise." And then Guts, just instinctively, because no witnesses, fucking runs the child through with his sword, and then that starts fucking with him once he realizes, "Holy shit, I just killed a kid," you know. And that's part of why he wants to leave, is because he's like, That's part of why he wants to leave, is because he's like, I can't deal with this shit in my head anymore.
He's basically got too much PTSD. He needs to go be a Thanos farmer somewhere.
Yeah. So he eventually leaves, and what happens is Griffith is like, well, you're not leaving without a fight, basically, because like
he's like,
basically it was like, I fought you and beat you to get you to join me, so if you want to leave, you have to fight me and beat me. So he does.
Like, you leave when I say you leave, and then Guts is like, I'm not the man I was when you beat me before.
Yeah. And then Guts proceeds to, in one strike with his very large sword, snap Griffith's blade in half and cut a little bit into his shoulder. And then he just leaves.
Wait.
In other words, he's like, "Bitch, I do not have time for your bullshit."
Yeah, basically, he's like, I'm leaving, period, goodbye. And he doesn't look back, because he keeps telling himself, you have this nice frame where it's like all snowy, and he's walking away, and you see the footprints behind him, and then it has the next frame is like a close-up of his face, and like from the side, and he's got a thought bubble or whatever, where he's like telling himself not to look back, don't look back. He's like he's talking to himself about how this hurts. He's like, Griffith, this hurts me as much as it hurts you, but this has to be done. I can't do this anymore, basically. But he's just thinking it. He's not saying it out loud, because that's not the kind of man that he is. So
he got diamond hands.
He leaves, and he goes and lives with a fucking like blacksmith for a little while. And the blacksmith makes him some new armor, a new weapon, and he goes and trains by having them drop logs down a waterfall, and he just fucking like cuts them up as much as he can while they're falling towards him, trying not to let the log land on him, because that would not be good.
My neighbor out here with his chip in his car, compensating for his tiny dick.
Anyway, so eventually he comes back to find out Griffith has been imprisoned.
I thought Casca came and got him, or one of the other Band of the Hawk members. Like,
no, he just kind of shows up again.
Pardon
no,
us.
you're thinking about a later point in the story where he runs into what's his name, Rickert. So he comes back to find out, to discover that Griffith was imprisoned, and Casca's now the leader, and they're a third the size that they used to be, and they're all wanted outlaws. And he finds out that Griffith got imprisoned because he was diddling the princess.
And then Dear Daddy found out because Dear Daddy wanted to diddle the princess.
Yeah, Dear Daddy the king wanted to diddle the princess.
My God, that's horrifying.
Yeah.
That's kind of the crux of the Berserk world, is everything's fucked up.
Yeah, there's no good in that world. Everything is fucked up. Well, that's not true. There are.
I say Griffith sounds like he's a good guy overall.
For now,
that
he's wearing the Demon King necklace.
Yeah, that's a small detail that you might not want to overlook. Is the fucking Demon King necklace? Yeah.
He's also Ringo hasn't really like made it terribly clear, but like the dude is like got no empathy. He's like a machine.
I was gonna say
he's
anybody
incredibly-
that fights you and then goes, "I own you now." That's not good people.
No.
Well, no,
he-
obviously that's not good people. I didn't think Griffith was a good person because I don't know a ton about Berserk, but I know enough to know Griffith's the bad guy.
So why'd you
Griffith
say
is very-
Griffith?
What?
You said Griffith.
Is that not his name?
Yes, Griffith.
Did you mean Guts? Guts seems like a good person.
No. I said I know that
Said-
Griffith is the bad guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but before that.
So,
Griffith
Yeah,
seems
but
like a
before
good
that, yeah, you said Griffith seems like a good person.
Well,
I
like,
thought I meant Guts. Yeah, Guts seems like a good person.
Okay. Griffith.
Well, I mean, because like he killed
Griffith's an
like
asshole.
he kills
Fuck
the
that
kid,
guy.
which they do kind of put in the light of like he didn't really think. He just acted and realized after the fact what he had done. And at that point he was like, okay, no, I'm done with this entirely because I'm not going to be the child killer.
Yeah.
This is not going to be a thing I do ever again.
But
And to ensure I never do it again, I am 100% his life. Which tells me that he does have a soul and he does have some level of empathy.
yeah, he has a great deal of empathy before the eclipse.
I don't know what the eclipse is. But I
Well,
assume
you'll
that's when
find out
shit goes
soon.
Sideways.
You'll find out soon.
I know. There's
Yeah,
a
no.
shit goes sideways moment.
Yeah, Griffith is very. I should have mentioned this before. He was right for telling me that I didn't make it very clear. He's one of those like cold calculating characters that only does things because they're advantageous and for no other reason. And he shows very little emotion towards people other than guts for some reason.
yeah, that's specifically something that they go out of the way to point out is that Griffith. Everybody looks up to Griffith because Griffith is a brilliant tactician and like a crazy good fighter, but things like acceptable losses aren't much of a bother to him. Meanwhile, Guts, he's like, if I can figure out a way to do this battle so none of my guys die, that would be great.
Yeah, Guts has the lives of his men in mind when he does his
Has the
tactician shit.
objective.
Yeah,
Not even
when he has his objective, Guts has the lives of his men and his friends in mind, and Griffith has the overall best outcome for the Band of the Hawk and himself in mind. And by best I mean most financially advantageous.
Whatever puts him in the best position possible. That's all really Griffith cares about.
Yeah, because Griffith's
That sounds
ambition.
Like Griffith did not diddle the princess for no reason.
Griffith's ambition. Well, no, he became like depressed when Guts left. That's because he felt like Guts was instrumental to his because his ambition was to rule his own kingdom. He wanted to rule over Midland. He wanted to become the next king, and he thought that Guts would be instrumental to that. And then
Yeah,
Guts
he
is
was
like,
sure that he
"Fuck
could
you,
do
I'm
that."
leaving,"
Yeah.
and he becomes like, he starts losing his
Distraught.
mind. Yeah, he becomes distraught.
Okay.
So then
Hang
he
on,
goes
guys.
and
I'm going to drop out of the call for a minute.
yeah, but then he goes and diddles the princess. Well, to be fair, she wanted him to fuck her, so it was consensual. But one of the maids sees them through the peephole in the morning, and is like, "I'm gonna go tell the king," and then the king has him imprisoned and put into a torture chamber at the bottom of the Tower of Justice, I think it's called.
The Tower of Justice.
That sounds like it's totally just.
Yeah. It's basically a tower full of prison cells. It's
No,
just.
really?
So it's the tower of you pissed off the king.
But
so
there's
you're
also
here now.
so it's hollow on the inside, and there's the bottom floor where Griffith was kept, and underneath that there's just a gaping chasm that goes really far down because they don't want anybody to get out. They don't want anyone to escape, so they make it as difficult as possible.
I'm guessing that's where they put Griffith.
They put Griffith all the way at the bottom. Yeah. So after Guts comes back and he finds out, okay, well, fucking shit's gone sideways already somewhat. They start a plan to go and rescue Griffith, and then they go and get him, and they find out they cut out his tongue, they cut his wrists and ankles so that he can never fight again and can't walk. He's very, very malnourished. He's like a damn near a fucking skeleton. They locked his head. So Griffith has this like helmet that he would wear as a part of his armor. That's shaped like a falcon beak or like a hawk beak or whatever. It's shaped like a bird. So they made a like cast iron version of that and locked it to his head. So it's very heavy.
I suddenly feel a little bit of empathy for why this guy wanted to just annihilate everyone involved with the kingdom.
So
I just to say, after hearing that they did all this to him, I feel like his wrath is a bit more justified.
yeah, but I think the means of how he went about it was not so ideal. But
well, sure. I'm just saying, like, goddamn.
But
I suddenly understand why he wanted to destroy everybody now.
They rescue him. They bring him back away from the kingdom. And then he manages somehow to get a horse and run off. And he falls into... Oh, by the way, the Bailet, the amulet that he had, the torturer, who's, by the way, like 2.5 feet tall, the torturer takes it and throws it into the fucking sewer. So when Griffith runs away and eventually he falls off of the horse into this like little stream, and there's the Bailet, because guess what? This is where the fucking sewage comes out. So there's the Bailet, and he picks it up, and all the entire band of the Hawk, except for one kid, show up. And this is what happens. This is the eclipse. So the sacrifice that he makes is the entire band of the Hawk, and the God Hand shows up that I mentioned earlier, which is these 5 demons masquerading as archangels, and they're constantly the entire time. Guts is trying to keep this from happening, and he's trying to get Griffith back from the God Hand, and they keep telling him, dude, this is what he wants. This is his ambition. There's nothing you can do at this point to stop it. So everybody dies. All of Guts' friends that he made when he was part of the Hand of the Hawk, they all die except for Casca, who they get saved. Him and Casca get saved by this mysterious dude wearing very heavy set of armor with a skull helmet, and he's riding a horse. And his horse has like skeleton themed armor as well. And
provider of the pale horse.
It is not death. It is a person who lived a long time ago, and
he's like a Death Knight, basically.
Yeah.
They don't ever call him that, but he's effectively your typical fantasy Death Knight. He's down to this cycle now with the God Hand. So whenever they show up, he shows up to fight them because he refuses to rest.
Right. So he shows up and attacks the God Hand and saves Guts and Casca, takes them outside of because when the eclipse is happening, when he leaves the place, you see that it's all inside a ginormous whirlwind, like a fucking like huge tornado. So he takes them outside of there, gets them really far away, and he tells Guts something along the lines of, she's not gonna remember anything because if she did, it would break her completely. So Casca is now mentally a newborn in an adult woman body, which is fantastic.
That
Oh, fuck.
the thing is, in any other manga, I would have been like, that wasn't super intentional for horrible reasons.
Yeah,
But
no,
in
with
this one, I'm
Casca,
like,
it's
pretty
like,
sure he's just trying to make the horrible situation more.
I also previous
yeah, no,
to this,
Casca, it's more like her brain just goes too much trauma. Control Alt Delete. Are you sure you would like to delete C hard drive? Yes.
her brain went
delete-
Deltree/sys32.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Right,
delete
yeah.
system 32.
Yeah.
Wipe System 32.
I should
Reset to
mention.
default settings.
I should mention. Previous to this, she was like a really strong fighter and a very like strong, independent type of woman, and
Yeah,
she didn't. She was very like she was very like stubborn, and she was like, you know,
I now
I don't give a-
understand why the feminists hate Berserk.
I don't give a fuck about well, also there's just a lot of rape in Berserk.
Yeah, because like, what's more awful than rape?
Yeah,
More rape.
what's more terrible than rape? More rape.
I really
yeah.
wish that people could realize that there are genuinely terrible things you can do to your
like
characters
really
that
looks
aren't
up
raped.
to
Well, there's a
Oscar
lot
really
of
looks up to Griffith, and Griffith is like super envious of Guts. So one of the things that Demon Griffith does is rapes Casca while making eye contact with Guts.
oh yeah. And then he tries to kill him, and he gets fucking flown back with fucking telekinesis or whatever. And then he gets his eye gouged out by another demon. But that was in the eclipse. So yeah, no,
Yeah.
that chapter when he loses his eye, it's called Right Eye's Last Light, which I thought was nice.
Okay.
But yeah, after that, demons start showing up everywhere, all over the fucking place.
Well, you missed an important thing. Because the sacrifices the Band of the Hawk, every member of the Band of the Hawk
Oh
gets
yes,
this
every
brand
member of the
sacrifice.
Band of the Hawk is branded with the mark of the sacrifice, which
So
is
Guts has
an
mark.
actual real life witchcraft sigil, but it is not
Yeah.
that. It's not what it is in Berserk. It's something different.
But they use that symbol
Yeah.
for
And-
specifically for the symbology of it.
Yes, and he has one. Guts has one. Casca has one. So Guts he has it on the side of his neck, and Casca's is on her chest. Well, it landed in different places on everyone. It showed a bunch of other people, like some of them it went to like their arm or their fucking cheek or their forehead
Or their
or some
leg.
shit. Or their leg, yeah. Like random body parts. It just goes wherever.
Well,
So
the point is, demons are attracted to this symbol,
Yes.
and the demon plague will continue until all sacrifices have been sacrificed.
right, and because of this, the brand of the sacrifice kind of pulls Guts between planes of existence, where he exists physically and metaphysically in the identical space. It's a bit strange. They go
Sorry,
into
my brain just did not comprehend that statement.
Essentially, he's in the physical world and the demon world at the same time.
yes,
So he's talking about
that concept is something that I get. I'll be honest with you. Metaphysical is one of those words that's thrown around so much. I'm not entirely sure what it
because
actually
it just
means.
means anything more than ordinary.
yeah. The Death Knight, who, by the way, they never tell you what his name is throughout the whole
I
fucking
thought
story.
he was like some ancient king.
It's they allude to that, but they never flat out tell you.
And that's where Dark Souls gets its storytelling format.
He also exists the same way, where he exists on the physical plane and the demon plane at the same time.
Yeah, this dude is one of those like literally too angry to die types.
Yeah, the
Well, isn't that
Death
Guts'
Knight.
whole thing? Too angry to
also yeah, too angry to die.
Yeah.
They're very they
It's,
share a lot of
Yeah,
like
because
character
the
traits.
idea is that Guts is like the new iteration of him. He's
Yeah.
even the first person to refer to Guts as the struggler.
Yes. the struggler.
He takes one of the knight's swords on that very first night because he's unarmed, and there's demons coming after him. So he doesn't think, "Oh, it's a death knight." He just goes, "That guy has a sword. I'm taking his sword."
Yeah, he literally just grabs it. He's like, I'm borrowing this.
He just yeets the dude's sword. Rather, he yoinks the dude's sword, and then he yeets the demons back from whence they came.
Yeah. So
And
basically,
the Death Knight's like, yo, I like this dude.
That's just actually, yeah, because he's like, very well, struggler.
the lore from that point on expands exponentially. It goes from this like just regular, oh, it's a medieval story, you know, these guys, you know, fighting in a war or whatever, to fucking just the craziest shit happening all over the fucking place.
Well, we've been going for an hour so far, and 3 more people have to talk about their books, so maybe we'll
Alright,
cut it off there.
Well, the Golden Age arc is the most important part of the story because it lays the groundwork for the rest of it. Basically, that's the part that I covered right now. If you're interested in it, go read it. You can find it on a lot of like
Is that
manga
what the
apps.
egg of
and,
the king is
the
about?
egg of the king is the Bailet. Yeah, that's the amulet.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. I was wondering about that because there's a Berserk movie called The Egg
Yes.
of the King.
That there's the
Berserk
movie.
movies
There are
they
no.
they're
Listen,
very clunky animation.
there
It feels
are
like
3
cheaper
Berserk
Ruby.
movies. There are 3 Berserk movies. There is the Golden Age 1 and 2, and then there's the Egg of the King.
I assume the Golden Age
only
1
seen-
and 2 come first.
Yes. I've not seen any of them, but there's also the Berserk 2016 anime, which don't watch it. It's terrible. Read the manga, it's better. But yeah.
Although if you can find a legitimate copy of it, the 1990s anime for Berserk is also pretty good.
You can
But it's
watch the
incomplete.
entire thing for free on YouTube. At least you could a few months ago. I don't know. I haven't checked yet recently, but I'm pretty sure it's still up there because that's where I watched it. Each episode is like 30 minutes long, and there's like 25 episodes. But yeah, that's basically just the Golden Age part. I like the story. I like the fucking art style. It really like drew me in, and I kept wanting to read more and more of it. It was very interesting to me and very like engaging.
Yeah, I
and
really resonate with a rapey edgelord.
He's not rapey. He only does that one time because he gets like partially possessed.
Wow.
But
He has a
yeah.
problem.
Just explain the rape away.
Well, he stops himself because he realizes what he's doing and what's happening, and he's like, "Oh fuck, shit." But
Oh fuck! I shit yourself.
anyway,
I'm going to Brown.
if you can get if you can get over the edginess, and if you can approach it objectively, it's a really good story. Even though it's very dark, I really suggest that you read it.
I wouldn't enjoy that story because it's very, how do I put this? Like
Rapey.
grungy.
Well, I mean, here's the thing: is it's a different kind of edgy. It's not like your stereotypical edgy that makes you want to roll your eyes. It's edgy in the sense of it's about the human condition.
The world
It's
is
about the
awful and
human
it's not-
condition
it's
and
grim dark.
how
That's
it's
a good
about
way to
the
put it.
human. If you would let me speak, it's about the human condition and about how people still push on through the most awful shit.
Yeah. And he meets a witch. Anyway, yeah, read it, watch the anime. I'm gonna let someone else talk now.
I'm gonna be honest. I forgot.
Zeta's up
the
next.
order. I just remember that I'm last. So I'm gonna get to talk like nothing about mine, but that's okay.
Well, I'm going to be pretty quick about mine because I got 20% left on my battery, so I'm probably going to go through mine and then drop out of the call because I'm driving.
Okay.
You go pick up
So,
Kitty Cat.
like I said on the last episode, I'm really super into Lord of the Rings, and I read the books first. The Lord of the Rings. Whoa, hey, hang on. I just start going fucking crazy. The Lord of the Rings book, where it all started, super great, super awesome. All the same things I said about in the previous episode. The other book I wanted to touch on, I was just like, oh, what's some really good book that I've read that's not a series, so I don't have to do what Ringo just did. Huckleberry Finn. Huckleberry Finn is one of these books that got, you read it in high school and it's like, oh, it's a banned book. And they say, oh, it's banned because they use the N-word a lot. Well, if you actually read the book, Huckleberry Finn is about a boy who's raised in a very Southern Catholic culture, and he's told things like, if you free a slave, that's a sin, and you sacrifice your salvation. And you're going to hell because of it. And so these are the things he's told, and he's told black people are property, black people aren't people, this, that, and the other, things of the time. And he refers to them by the N-word because that's just what they are. That's the only word he's ever known to refer to them by. And the story, specifically the book Huckleberry Finn, the one that's a sequel to Tom Sawyer, he's running away because he's freed this slave who's sort of like a surrogate father figure to him because he kind of grew up alone. And it's a story about him essentially coping with the idea that I'm going to go to hell because I saved this person. And really, really struggling with the idea that how can anyone think that this person isn't a person because of his experiences with him, and discovering, he has, likes, dislikes, hopes, dreams, desires, and whatnot. And for me, it really just, I don't want to make any assumptions, but we all know the U.S. government's got some opinions. It really seems like they said that Huckleberry Finn was banned because of the language, but it was actually banned because of the message, and it was banned during a time where racism was still like the thing to do.
And it just hasn't been revised.
But yeah, it is written by Mark Twain. It was written shortly thereafter segregation was in discussion, but it is a very, very good and very human story about surpassing where you came from, understanding that things are not always exactly the way that your parents or your parents' culture said they are. Like, I'm sure we all have had, or at least most of us probably had, I know we here on the podcast have, our parents were the types who were like, well, I mean, it's a holiday season. So they told us things like Yule or Kwanzaa were evil because they were, horrific pagan rituals.
And I wasn't allowed to watch the Lorax because it was too tree hugger.
Yeah,
like
true
that.
facts. Mm-hmm.
I wasn't allowed to play Final Fantasy games or any
I
of the
wasn't allowed to play Yu-Gi-Oh!
Or
too
watch
mystical.
anime.
Yeah. So stuff like that.
And
So,
other various satanic panic propaganda.
Yeah.
but yeah, so Huckleberry Finn is a story about like coming from a place like that and going into another place where you realize things are not always the way that they were presented to you by. And just because someone isn't what you are and doesn't believe what you believe in doesn't make them any less of a person. And I think that's only gets more important as time goes on. So that's one of my most cherished books, because it's not, there's a lot of like really feel good books out there. There's a lot of just like, epic fantasy novels or like really cool sci-fi novels or like super intriguing mystery novels. But my favorite books are about the human condition. And so something like Huckleberry Finn I find very, very important because of that. And yeah, so with that, I have like 15% battery and I'm driving. So I will let
Okay.
you all discuss that and I will bid you adieu.
All right. I'm glad you
Adieu.
kept that so concise in comparison to my rambling.
Yeah.
I'm
now
bad
I'm
at
like,
talking
Well,
about stuff.
I kinda had
I'm
to.
sorry.
Now I'm like, oh man, I wish I would have let Ringo talk a little bit more.
It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
I'm talking
'Cause
about
he
Narnia,
still has to
so
talk.
we're
Oh,
gonna.
you're gonna talk
yeah,
about
no, we're
Narnia?
good.
Oh, okay.
We're fine.
Yeah.
So that would make it your turn, buddy.
I would
Right.
make it.
'Cause I'm last.
Aslan. Ride me.
Ride me.
Okay. So, one of the book series that I've always enjoyed is called the Dormia series because I found it really interesting. It's obviously like a sci-fi fantasy type book. But it's not like so ridiculously out there. The basic idea is you have this group of people from a city in the Ural Mountains called Dormia, who essentially their whole deal is they're all sleepwalkers, but when they're sleepwalking, they have superpowers, basically. So like they more it's like when they go to sleep, they do great things. So you have a lot of they make a lot of art while they're asleep. They invent things while they're asleep. They perform feats of great athletic feats or otherwise while they're asleep. In fact, the main character's uncle, who's from Dormia, flew around the globe while he was asleep in an airplane in an era of like early era airplanes, like World War II type airplanes.
Back when it was impressive to do so.
Yeah, back when it was impressive to do so. Not like jet engine airplanes. And he did the whole thing asleep. The main character is this kid named let me pull up his full name here. His name is Alfonso Perplexin.
I do remember Alfonso, yeah.
I remember Alfonso
Perplexin.
Yeah.
The fact that his name is Perplexin.
Yeah. To be fair, that was the first time I ever heard the name Alfonso, and I was like, that's an interesting name. But the Perplexin thing is a little perplexing, if you know what I'm saying.
It's not any worse than Arthur Pendragon.
I mean, I guess not.
If you don't know, David, Arthur Pendragon is the main character of I forget what the series is called, but Mr. Monday, Mr. Tuesday.
No, that would be Arthur Penhaligon.
Yeah, I was gonna say
it's called the Keys.
It is Penhaligon. Arthur Pendragon is fucking King Arthur.
Pendragon is King Arthur.
Sorry. Oh fuck! Oh my bad, man.
Legend.
I'm sorry, man. Then
so, like we said at the beginning of this episode, Ringo doesn't read.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Fucking
so he
Arthur Pendragon from the Keys to the Kingdom series, yeah.
Dude. Yeah, Keys to the Kingdom. The one with Sora.
The one with Sora.
Okay, that was a good joke, admittedly.
Hey, I mean,
his main keyblade is called the Kingdom Key.
Yeah, he do have a keyblade. It's technically a pair of clock hands, but they call it a key. And
but then also all the other ones are also keys and also other various objects such as gloves or a trident.
Yeah, but unlike Sora's keyblade,
one of them is a literal sword.
Yeah, unlike Sora's keyblade, Arthur's keyblade is an actual fucking blade.
Yeah.
And not a bludgeoning device.
Way more useful than the keyblade.
Fuck. Anyway, we were talking about
yeah, we were talking about Dormia.
Alfonso.
I could go off on Keys to the Kingdom because that's another book series. That's one that Dave and I have read from start to finish.
I've read it from start to finish, but I don't remember most of it.
Wait. Hold on. Ringo read a thing.
Yeah,
Ringo read an
Yeah.
actual
I
book
used to
with
read.
no pictures, just
I used to read a
just
lot
words.
before I got to high school, and then I stopped reading.
So if you used to read a lot, how do you not have a single fucking book you could go like, oh, this
I
is a
haven't-
great book. I read it and
I
enjoyed
haven't
it.
read for years.
Because I have very short-term memory.
So
Also, I have a mental disconnect between like moving into mom's apartment and everything before that. So it's difficult for me to.
I mean, fair
It's-
enough.
It's difficult for me to like piece shit together from before that sometimes.
Um,
That's a trauma response.
so Dormia,
So my dorm room.
good old Alfonso Perplexin. He's like this regular kid,
With
as-
an irregular name.
with an irregular name, yeah. And what they kind of tell you about him right away is like he grew up with just his mom. His dad,
Mom was a boy.
his dad kind of disappeared somewhere, and then he also
He went out for milk and never came back.
that's
Went out
not
for-
really what happened, but
He went out for a midnight stroll, more like.
and his mom never tells him like, oh, your dad's a bastard and he ran away. She's like, no, he was a very brave man who went to go do a very brave thing and never came back. That's
That sounds like
essentially
he went and died in a war.
it does sound like that, doesn't it? That's not what happened either, though.
I take it he is a piece of shit that just left.
No, he's not. You do find out what happened to him in the second book. It's a 3-book. It's a trilogy. I haven't read the third one yet. I haven't been able to find a copy of the third one. I probably could get an ebook of it and just read it that way. I just have it's the fact that I physically have the other two, and I'd like to have the third one.
That makes sense.
But there was a lot of things in this series that like struck me as like, oh, that's cool, and like from a weird angle.
God damn it.
So essentially,
You do be liking weird shit.
I do be
Right.
liking weird shit. Essentially, what happens in the first book is his uncle shows up, who has been kind of like a surrogate father figure for him. His uncle is a famous pilot, obviously. He set a world record for flying around the world asleep. So he's kind of this famous pilot from like World War II era. So he's not around all the time, but when he is around, he spends as much time with his nephew as he can. And he shows up one day, sleeping in his airplane, and just sort of lands it on their front lawn. Which I guess they have like a manor house.
The course for him.
Yeah, they have like a manor house, so they're not super poor.
Well, their father or the
Actually,
their
no.
the uncle is.
I was
a
gonna say,
famous dude.
now that I think about it, I think they went to go visit their uncle's man. It's been a minute since I read it. I think they actually take a car up to go visit the uncle, and then he's not there, and then he shows up in his plane.
Wait, was his uncle's plane? I thought it was his dad's plane.
It's his uncle's plane. And then his uncle, there's a lot of like little stuff, like, you know, families talking to each other and blah blah blah, whatever that happens, you know, character building or something. And then his uncle tells him like, my boy, you've now turned whatever age he turned. I forget. I think in the first
Probably
book
like
he's
17 or
he's
something.
only like 16 or something in the first book. And his uncle is just like, my boy, your father asked me to give you this. And he hands him this package. And Alfonso opens up the box and he finds this glowing rainbowy seed. He's like, the fuck am I supposed to do with this? And it's like, I guess I'll plant it, I guess. And then he gets like a little he gets like a little sprout, and then
Is it a rainbowy sprout?
yeah, it is. It's a colorful rainbowy sprout, and then he finds out, like he has a dream that basically tells him, your destiny is to return the sprout to Dormia and plant a new great tree. That's what that seed is, you little fuck. Because I guess Dormia runs off of tree power. They have like a great tree, and their great tree is dying.
Then.
Yeah. So he has to go on an adventure to go replant a big old tree. So he goes off with his uncle.
Out of curiosity, why does that need to be an adventure? It kind of sounds like you just go to the town in the mountains and
Because it
plant the
doesn't
tree.
quite work that way. Because, Dave, this series has another thing called magic.
I kind of assume so, and you weren't talking about it, so I'm kind of like trying to prod you.
Yeah, so you can't just fly to Dormia. It doesn't work that way. You have to take a very specific magic path.
Cool.
So he has to go on a very specific journey. And he basically he goes with his uncle to this port, where he meets one of the other main characters named
Rushes
Bill.
into a pillar in a train station.
No, not even close. He meets another character who's a dock worker named Bill Blocks, who's just like this big fucking dude. He's like
Bill Blocks.
His name is Bill Blocks. That's one word, Bill Blocks.
Bill Blocks, like BLOX, like Roblox.
Yes, like BILBLOX. That's his name.
Jesus Christ, what a name.
Bill Blocks. Yeah.
That's so much better than Alfonso.
See, this is one thing about this book. It's like the names are just a little bit weird.
What's his dad's name? What's his uncle's name?
I don't remember his dad's name or his uncle's name.
Wow.
Because they're like
Sounds
not.
like they just really wanted you to remember the names of the major
Alfonso.
characters.
Yeah, they really
gave them
they
really
did.
weird names.
So they
Alfonso
go.
is actually a great name, I think. And
I'll also say
it's underused as hell.
I'll also say Alfonso had a fucking fantastic first party member, because the first person he recruits is the goddamn tank.
David, I feel like you would name your firstborn son Alfonso and your secondborn son Oswald.
No. Alfonso maybe, but Oswald definitely not, because I would love my
Oswald.
children. I would love my children, and now
You would not want to curse them with that fucking name. Me neither.
yeah, here's the thing. There are people in the world who will think Alfonso is a cool name. Maybe not a ton of them, but enough that Alfonso will have a good childhood. If I name one of them Oswald, they are just going to be ridiculed.
Relentlessly bullied.
That's like when you're in the hospital.
Life.
When you're in the hospital with your wife and they're like, put your child's name on this paper, and they write Sora, and then you hand them the divorce papers.
They write Sora and you erase it and write Sauron.
Oh, man. If I could be permitted, I could be permitted to what's the word I'm looking for? Rabbit trail for a moment. I actually met someone back in the day who named their daughter Kyrie after the character from Kingdom Hearts.
That is
And I am
unfortunate.
pathetic sod of a human being.
Terribly sorry to this little girl who's
What a
probably
pathetic sod of a human being to name their fucking child that.
I
Jesus.
will say, Kyrie as a name on its own, not a bad name. Kyrie, but the fact that it was associated with Kingdom Hearts now, oof.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Well,
man.
here's the thing though. The problem is she was named Kyrie at a time when Kingdom Hearts was really popular as well. So
Yeah.
people knew that that's where the name was from immediately, and that probably caused some problems.
Yeah. Let's open the door to darkness. Imagine that bullying at school. God
It's
damn.
better if mankind is ruled by darkness. Do you remember that line?
No.
That's from Kingdom Hearts 2.
Then again, I don't remember most of the 90s.
G4 TV, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
There's something only some of us remember.
There's something only 2 out of 3 of us on this call remember.
There's something that I wasn't alive to remember.
No, you were alive. You just weren't really sentient yet.
Infancy
I do
does not
sometimes
count
look
as
up the
alive.
things that happened in the year I was born, and I go, huh.
JFK was shot.
I
No,
don't.
you're not that old.
I don't
No.
think so. I don't
That
think
was
that.
way earlier,
Yeah.
buddy.
I know. Yeah, you're not that old. You're
Yeah.
close, though.
So they go on a boat. Alfonso and Bill
Yeah,
Box.
we were talking about
Yeah, we
that.
were talking about a
boat.
book. Yeah. I'm gonna say now, I don't remember a lot of the details because it has been it's been about a decade since I read the books, even though I have them sitting on my shelf.
See, that's the other reason I didn't talk about Keys to the Kingdom, because it's been about a decade since I read that, too.
So a lot of the details are a little bit fuzzy, but I do know that at some point during their journey, Alfonso accidentally ends up like smearing magic powder on Bill Blocks, and he becomes blind permanently forever.
Wow, that
That
must suck.
is quite unfortunate.
Wouldn't you think
Well,
that magic powder would like
you'll-
enhance your eyesight or something?
You'll feel better for him though, because in book 2, in book 1 they describe him as just like a really big dude who's wearing like a white t-shirt and like overalls. And he has like a little bit of scruff on his face, and hair to his ears. And in the second book, fucker walks in, long ass ponytail, full beard, full like pimp suit. He's just like, the fuck is up, Alfonso? He's just an absolute Chad in book number 2.
He certainly did not allow his condition to define him.
No, he did not.
He became a fucking pimp. Let's
And in
go.
actual fact, there's a little bit of book 1 where he's like, "Oh man, I'm not used to being blind," but by the end of book 1, he's just a fucking badass again. But they do end up going to Dormia and planting the tree.
Obviously.
But they on their way they meet the third party member, who is a girl named Rasuza.
Ryuza.
So the 3 of them, this is the part that sucks, right? Because it's like, I remember the main characters, and I remember that they have to go on this journey through like these snowy ass mountains and face a bunch of bad shit, but I don't remember what any of the bad shit was. Like there's some sort of like magical antagonist monsters that they have to face. I
We all
remember
make mistakes in the heart of passion, Jimmy.
much clearer the antagonists from book 2 because those were way more memorable. But there's some like weird shit that happens to them in book 1. But the gist of it is they plant the tree, they go back home. But they leave Rasuza in Dormia because that's where she's from. And Alfonso and Bill Blocks go back home, and Bill Blocks becomes like, he goes from like working on the at the docks to like owning the dock. And he becomes like really rich and stuff, and then he becomes like some sort of partnership with Alfonso's uncle. Because I guess
Which explains why he's a pimp in book 2.
yeah, because I guess between the 2 of them they have boats and airplanes to transport shit, so they end up being richer than Alfonso's uncle already was. But in book 2,
You know, with his fucking manner and shit.
yeah, in book 2 he gets like another letter. He gets a letter from Dormia where they're like, "Holy shit, Alfonso, your father's alive." Oh yeah, by the way, I skipped over that, but in book 1 they tell you, by the way, Alfonso, your dad died trying to do exactly the thing you're doing right now.
Oh, good. That's always the best encouragement.
He got the magic seed. He got the magic seed and ran off into the mountains by himself
This
and died.
30-plus-year-old badass of a father I had, he couldn't do this, but you're gonna ask my 16-year-old ass to do it, and then just expect it to all work out.
Well, yeah, because
bro,
because he had fucking bill blocks in him.
And also plot armor.
Bill blocks.
So what I'm hearing
Bill
here
Blocks-
is they should have just entrusted the journey to Bill Blocks.
Bill Blocks
from
is
the
his
beginning.
plot armor. I'm not even gonna lie. Bill Blocks is like, oh, there's an enemy? Punch. It's like, oh, hang on, you need this rock moved? Sure, no problem. Oh, this gate is locked? No problem. I've just got thick-ass muscles. Let me just tear it the fuck open for you. Like, he would not have...
Fucking Hunter x Hunter kill his family gate.
Yeah, he would not
That
have even made it without Bill Blocks there. Bill Blocks does so much shit for him. The other thing that I kind of glossed over a little bit is that Alfonso gets a very unique weapon. That because at some point he has to fight himself, right? He gets
Wait,
a very...
Of course, because
he has
every...
No, he has to
himself,
fight. He
or
has
he
to
has to
fight
fight?
by himself, Ringo, because
Yeah.
Bill Blocks
Well,
is
see.
blind, so
No,
he has to
no,
pick up some of the slack.
No. See, fucking. That's what
The way
Dave
you
thought
said that,
Yeah.
the way you said that, it made it sound like he had to fight a dark mirror of himself.
No, he has to fight.
I immediately picked up on that because of what fucking he said was, oh yes, because every fantasy, whatever the fuck. I'm just like, yeah, no, that lost in translation there.
He has to fight by himself. But the weapon that he gets is an orb.
What you should have said is he
Yes,
himself has to fight.
the amazing orb. Everyone knows the orb style of weapon use. And
Oh hey, I mean,
Yeah.
if you play Brawlhalla, you do. The fuck?
But here's the thing: his orb is actually fucking cool. Because like okay, so they kind of tell you, right? Like this is they tell you like this is the traditional magic orb that you can do magic shit with, and he's like, cool. I'm gonna throw it.
Okay. Wait.
Here's the
suddenly
thing.
feeling a lot less empathy for this
Here's
protagonist.
the thing. The magic semi-sentient orb goes, guess I'm a throwing weapon now, and just becomes a fucking boomerang orb.
Boomerang.
Alrighty.
So like he'll throw it and it like auto snipes his enemies. It just like goes right to their head and knocks them out and like zips around the
Sounds like
room.
This is the story of how the hero didn't actually have to do anything and got carried by his equipment and his party members.
He really did. He's basically Frodo.
You know what? Now that I think about it, that is exactly Frodo's story.
Yeah.
Got
Frodo-
carried by
By
his
his party
fucking
members.
equipment and party members.
Frodo really don't do
Specifically
shit
Sam.
except be
Yeah.
Have
depressed.
we talked about? I think we mentioned it in the last one. Sam is the hero of that story.
Oh
not
yeah,
Sam
we've talked
was
about that.
the-
Sam is
Sam
definitely
was
the hero.
Strong.
Yeah.
Yeah, he even gets an epitaph. Samwise the Strong.
Yeah, so in book 2, he gets a note that's like, your father is alive, and it's going to be your duty to go out and find him. So he's like, all right, I'm going to go get my old crew. I'm going to go pick up Bill Blocks. Like, hey, Bill Blocks, I got to go back to Dormia. And he's like, all right, bet. I'll go with you right now. He's like, what about
That
your
worked
business?
Amazingly for me. I became
Yeah.
stupid rich after we
Yeah,
did this last
yeah.
time. I am totally down to do this again.
Yeah. And then Alfonso's uncle is like, hey, turns out I can fly a plane there because I'm from Dormia. And they're like, oh, sweet. All right, cool. Let's just take the private jet up there. And then it crashes.
Of course.
Of course. Because
Yeah.
then we wouldn't have a story.
And a lot of things happen here. This is where you find out that Alfonso can go Super Saiyan if he goes to sleep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I take it the
this is
Dormia
how...
sleeper superpower thing is genetic and not
It's
just like
magical
if
of
I
some
lived
sort.
at Dormia, then this happens.
That.
I think it. I seem to recall that it's like, no, anyone can do that if they concentrate hard enough, because like he doesn't. He goes into like being half awake, half asleep, while the plane is crashing, and then they literally describe it as like he can see the universe and he's walking on the snowflakes as they're falling down.
Yeah,
and
I remember you telling me about that. I was like, oh yeah, he falls asleep and he like walks on water
Yeah.
molecules in the air.
Yeah, he like walks on water molecules and he fucking rescues his entire team from the plane crash, and then the plane crashes and he's just like magically carrying them all and just sets them on the ground, and he's like, all right, we gotta walk the rest of the way. They're just like, are we gonna talk about the fuck you just did? And he's like, nah.
So my take on this is the first book sounds like it was not written with the anticipation of a sequel. And
I'll say it's a lot.
Book had to up the ante a bit.
It's a lot better. It's a lot better than how I'm making it out. I'm doing the incredibly simple version from someone who hasn't read it in 10 years. And so it's mostly just the bits that I remember. But it's actually really good book series.
Sure.
So
this sounds very Matrixy. Like,
this is what I find
super abilities or whatever in the first Matrix movie, but then in the second one, like, they just went ape shit on it.
Oh, don't worry, it ramps up even more. Because guess what? Remember that part where it said his father was alive?
Was it a lie?
No, it's not a lie, because it's at this point in the book where they're like, all right, Alfonso and crew start walking off to Dormia, and then there's a cut, and they're like, chapter this one, so-and-so, which is, I forget what the name was, but the name of Alfonso's father is now crawling through the snow, and you're like, the fuck? And the next, like, 3 chapters are from his perspective.
I hate when books do that.
And he's just like by himself in the mountains somewhere. He's lost in like a hedge maze or something. He's been bitten by a snake. He ends up in a cottage somewhere where some mysterious person is like, I will remove the snake venom.
Trustworthy.
He's going on like an actual mountain journey. And then it cuts back to magical Alfonso and his magical friends, who have made it back to Dormia and have, since it's been like 2 or 3 years now, everyone's a little bit older, it cuts back.
Wait, it cut 2 or 3 years away?
No. Book 2 starts 2 or 3 years later.
Books.
Yeah.
Between books.
So Rasuza comes back, but they're like, Rasuza's a woman now. And Alfonso's like, oh my god, she's hot.
Oh, fuck.
Because of course.
Question, was that necessary?
No, it was not.
I mean, not really. But I only say that because I don't necessarily think romance is necessary in any story.
Well, that's where I'm coming from. Like, I mean, the way you're describing it, it makes it sound like it wasn't a natural thing. Like, they have her come back and they purposely go out of their way to talk about how womanly she is now.
Well, it's not like
going out of your way to point that out is not as necessary as
they don't do the thing where they spend like 3 paragraphs on it and go like, and her hair, and they're just like, Rasuza walks in and she's grown up now, by the way. And Alfonso's like, oh shit, she's grown up now, and so have I, and now I have a boner.
The sentence goes as follows: Rasuza walks in with big honkin' badonkers.
No, it's more like she runs in and she's like, Alfonso, and gives him a big hug.
And he's like, my dick's hard.
Yeah, basically.
He's just like, I don't know how to feel about this now.
Yeah, he's like, oh, this was different when we were kids. But anyway, the magical trio of magical protagonists. I forget how exactly this happens, right? Because they end up going on like a side quest because Dormia has a sister city that's called it's called like Jongo or something. I forget. It starts with a J. And they find out that their magical super tree is cursed. So Alonzo is like, well, I'm really supposed to be finding my dad, but I guess I can try to go fix your tree. And he's given another magical seed and sent to that city. So they have to then... But here's the thing. The overground passage between Dormia and this city is, like, long ago collapsed. They're like, yeah, but you can take the underground route, but it's also infested with monsters. But you can take the underground route. So they take the underground route because of fucking course they do. And of course, because it's an underground route and they can't see shit anyway, Bill Blocks is the goddamn master of combat. Because he's already blind, so he's just like, all right.
On for this shit, bitch.
Yeah. And then this I remember the enemies from this one really well because they basically say that they're these like cave people. But the way they describe them is like, it's like a person who learned... They sort of describe them like Falmer from the Elder Scrolls, but they're not blind, but their skin is see-through.
Interesting.
Because there's been no light in the caves, so their skin hasn't absorbed any vitamin whatever.
Vitamin D.
Yeah. So their skin is literally see-through. Which they find out because it turns out Alfonso's magical boomerang orb can also glow.
Okay, then.
And then, so basically these things try to kill him a lot, and then they stop trying to kill him.
Obviously.
And this one shows up and is like, I'm not like the others. I can guide you through the caves. And they're like, this is incredibly suspicious.
Got him.
Yeah, they're like, this is super suspicious. But Rasuza is like, I believe him, because of course.
Because I'm girl and that's my character.
Because I see the best in people. And so, of course, Gollum leads them directly into a trap.
Yeah, no shit.
I need to use the bathroom.
Gollum,
How about you just took the name Gollum and we're like, yep, that's pretty much what it is.
Because that is basically exactly that character. And then he's just like, haha, you fell for it, bitches. Only he can't actually form English sentences very well, so he's just like, I trick you. And then Bill Box is like, I have a cane that says otherwise.
I trick you. Now you are stuck in here with us. No, you're stuck in here with me.
Yeah, basically. And they don't actually stick around and fight all of them, though. They run away. But Bill Blocks does take many of them out on the way. They end up running.
Awesome. Well done, Bill Blocks.
And they end up at the other city, and the people there are like really on edge and like, whoa, who the fuck are you? Why the fuck should we trust you? And then
'Cause I'm not a cave person.
he basically proves his magic Dormia powers, and they're like, well, I guess you could look at our tree. And then he like destroys their tree by planting the other seed, which then immediately grows up and destroys that tree.
I'm taking it that is not what happened when he fixed Dormia's tree.
Actually, that's exactly what happened. Like when he planted the little sapling in Dormia, and it immediately grew into a giant magic tree.
Like they did with the Aragon movie, where the dragon just immediately grows up.
Yeah. He's like, I'm going to go for a 5-minute flight and grow up entirely.
Yep. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Let's never talk about that movie ever again.
Yeah. And then like shit just goes off the rails after that, because like they there's a few more chapters with his dad, who ends up like surprise cottage person was an enemy, who actually did remove the poison from him for some reason. But then it was like, aha, I betray you. So he ends up running away, ends up in a prison somewhere. Somehow Alfonso gets wind that his dad is now in this prison. Alfonso and Billbox and Rasuza and Alfonso's uncle, who has now rejoined the party because they came back to the surface. They run off to go to this prison, and then then it cuts to a whole other group of people that we haven't met yet, which is just like this lady that I can only describe as a witch, and her apprentice, who you're not really sure what she looks like because her appearance keeps changing rapidly. Because
the witch or the apprentice?
The apprentice, because I guess depending on what her mood is, it changes her age.
Oh.
And the book ends with like Alfonso has just shown up where the prison is, and these other two have just shown up where the prison is, and everybody is headed towards where Alfonso's dad is, and then it's like, read book 3 for the rest. And I'm like, I haven't found book 3, and I don't know what's going on with that, and I'm kind of scared to open it up, because I haven't read the other two in 10 years.
Jesus.
Interesting.
Yeah, but a lot of the concepts of what, like, I know I kind of made it sound silly, but a lot of the concepts of what they did were like, you gave this person who's not really a fighter this item that is really fucking powerful in terms of fighting.
You gave the lowest level party member the legendary artifact.
Yeah, basically. And then the fact that they had a big old blind ox with them who was really badass. And the fact the thing that I really liked was like they took sleepwalking and they were like, what if we made sleepwalking awesome?
God damn.
But I'm intrigued I actually am intrigued to read the third book there and see what happened.
I don't think I've ever met anybody that actually like sleepwalks.
I don't think I have
In
either.
reality, it's not a fun condition.
No.
Which is kind of sad because
you can like fall down the stairs.
Wake up a sleepwalker, yeah.
Well,
like
also,
you are not aware of your surroundings at
if
all.
you wake up a sleepwalker, it could lead to them like freaking out and having a panic attack or some shit, and other things.
Yeah, I used to live with a sleepwalker. It is not a fun condition at all, and for the most part, sleepwalkers are not happy about that condition. They don't like it.
Yeah.
So if you like tie them down before they go to sleep.
That is a really cruel question, but
honestly, though,
it is something we have attempted. Yes, at their request, not ours. They wanted really badly to not sleepwalk, and they're like, "Well, maybe if you tied me to my bed," and we were like, "That sounds incredibly not cool of a thing for us to do." And he was like, "No, it's okay because I asked you to do it."
Because I asked.
And they got like really insistent about it, so we were like, "Fine, we'll try it." And exactly what I thought would happen is what happened, which is he ripped up his constraints and tore up his wrists with it. So that wasn't fun for anybody either.
Was that the same guy that had like the memory problem? Or
yep.
It was 2008.
Yep.
Okay.
Anyway, I just hang on. I just read the description, the Amazon description for Dormia. Apparently, the people in book 1 that he had to fight were called the Dragunia.
The Dragunia.
Oh my god! I need to read this book series again.
Alrighty. So I said earlier I was going to talk about Narnia. I'm only going to briefly touch on Narnia as a whole. I want to talk about my favorite book from Narnia because no one ever does. So
The Sorceress Apprentice.
That one's not Narnia.
Actually,
it is.
Wait, is it?
It is. It's a Magician Nephew. That's what it's called. Sorcerer's Apprentice is Disney.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's not fucking Narnia.
But it's essentially the same thing, though.
You seen the
No,
Sorceress
not really.
Apprentice, the live
But
action
let me
Sorceress Apprentice
for the
with
sake
Nick
of
Cage?
anyone who has lived under a rock for the last eon and doesn't know what Narnia is, let me briefly.
If you haven't seen Disney's Narnia,
Well, Disney did do a remake. They never get past. I'll go over this really quickly. So this is why I want to talk about it, is because there have been several attempts. The first one being from BBC to create a Narnia movie series, and anytime they do this, in the BBC one they never got past the silver chair, and in the Disney one, they felt that after Prince Caspian there wasn't enough money being made, so they canceled the project. But there was enough money left that the guys who made Prince Caspian and Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe were able to independently produce Voyage of the Dawn Treader, but they can't go past that because not enough money. And it's really unfortunate because every time they do this, the group's always like, we're gonna make it all the way through all the movies, all the way to the final battle. It never happens. Not a single fucking time has it ever happened. And I'm really upset about that because they always start with Lion, the Witch, of the Wardrobe because that was the first book written, and then they go to Prince Caspian because that was the second book written.
I feel like there's like 3 different Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe movies
There is.
at this point. So it's like
There's an animated BBC one. There's a non-animated BBC one with
don't really
terrible
need another
animal
live action
costumes. And then there's the Disney one, which looks amazing. But,
Ride me. It doesn't
you know, everyone talks about Ride Me, but they don't talk about in Prince Caspian the For Aslan.
Yeah, okay.
Bear.
But do not quote the ancient magics to me, which I was there when they were written. That's also from Narnia.
Okay, so fun fact: the Magician's Nephew tells us about when it was written. If you read the Magician's Nephew, then you too were there when it was written. So that's why I love the Magician's Nephew, is because it tells the story of how Narnia was created and all the things that were happening, and basically Narnia's mythic age before the traditional setup of things happened, how the White Witch occurred, who she is, where she's from, why she's there. All of that is explained in The Magician's Nephew, and they never get to it in the movies, because they never get past Silver Chair in the movies, which I just think is damn unfortunate and should.
There's a lot of story to be had beyond that.
There
is a lot of story to be had, but it's just like I think
that a big part of it is the fact that in the first Chronicles of Narnia you have one set of characters, and then in Prince Caspian it's the same set of characters, and then in the next film, which either ends up Voyage of the Dawn Treader or Silver Chair, it's a whole different cast of characters. Except for one. There's one that's the same. Everybody else is different. Oh, yeah. And then I think when that happens, people go, eh.
You know what? I can see that, and I can see how that worked better than or it worked better at the time it was written than it does now.
Yeah, it works better as a book in that sense.
The sense is that people are growing up. And so these people who were incredibly important and instrumental to shaping Narnia before, growing up in their real world, in the aftermath of World War II and everything, they don't have time to worry about that. And no longer being wide-eyed kids with hearts full of wonder, there's a part of them that doesn't really want to have adventures and stuff anymore.
Yeah, man, they just want to do their fucking taxes, bro.
I kind of understand, because now that I'm 31 years old, I'm kind of like, when I was a kid, I was like, adventure sounds amazing, and then you go on a few, and you're like, adventure is really cool to tell about in stories. When you're in the adventure, it fucking sucks.
Mm-hmm.
In real life, not necessarily like in fantasy books or whatever. Sounds like in Dormia, the kid pretty much just didn't have to worry about too much because he had a
He got
blind
far
ox.
carried by
He
fucking.
he didn't have to worry about that
Um,
much. Yeah.
So, but in real life, you know, adventures are like, we accidentally got off on the wrong exit to the highway, and then we
ended up
tried
in
to
a
find our
fucking
way in
Denny's
the middle of the
back
night and found instead that we were like 2 inches from a lake, and if we did not perfectly drive this, we were about to fall into like a 20-foot deep lake and die. And that is an actual adventure I actually had, and it fucking sucked. As in, like, afterwards, it makes a really great story. Like, I could tell that story and it would be fun. But being in it, I'd rather not
Probably
do
you
it
were
again.
probably shitting yourself, huh?
Yeah, I'd rather not do it again. Just being blunt. So I kind of understand that there's that sense. I think that is a sense that people have, and adventures were different back in the day of C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien, when, and I'm talking about real life adventures, were different because the world was different back then. It wasn't as connected. In one of the books, they talk about how, I think it's Susie or Susan or whatever, the older sister of the original four. She's going to college in America, and that's a big fucking deal.
Yeah. For back then,
So
it is. Yeah.
there's stuff like that going on that I think things like that kind of pushed the characters out. And what I did like about it is C.S. Lewis does take the time to talk about how, you know, as humans, we grow up and we grow out of things. And as we grow out of things, some things that we used to be willing or able to do as children with little to no issue or regard, we can't do that anymore. A modern version of that might be, you know, as a child, I played video games for hours and hours and hours at a time. But as an adult, I can't do that because I have to have a job and I have to pay rent and all this other stuff. There's things I need to worry about as an adult that just were not concerns when I was a child. You know, as a child, I'm like, why can't I eat lobster all the time? I like lobster. As an adult, oh, because it's fucking expensive. You know, like that's the difference. And I think C.S. Lewis did a good job of doing that. But the other reality is in our current day and age, we don't like to think about that concept because it's not fun and it's not lighthearted and it's very. People try really hard to escape reality. Escapism's a big thing right now, and C.S. Lewis's books are not escapism, even though you might argue they are because they go to another world. They're not. They very clearly address very real issues. I think to some degree that's also an issue with getting a full movie series done of it. It's a story that talks about the real life issues under the pretend guise of a story that is escapism, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But to go to the specific book I want to talk about, also it's the most ham-fisted. This is the Christian story ever. He dies and comes back in 3 days. Totally not inspired by the Bible at all. I think that's funny too, because if you look at, if I could briefly say this, J.R.R. Tolkien was a Christian, and C.S. Lewis was an atheist. And J.R.R. Tolkien converted C.S. Lewis to Christianity. That is an actual historical fact.
Wow.
And I
I'm
think
learning.
what is really interesting and funny about that is if you look at J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings and the way he addresses some of the core concepts and issues that Christianity tries to tackle, they are very nuanced. They are very, like, there's a lot of layers to it, and you're not going to understand everything right away. And like, to really truly understand the story that those books are telling, you really need to read the books. A movie, no matter how good, just cannot do it justice. However, C.S. Lewis, the shiny new Christian who just made Jesus his new best buddy, wrote an incredibly ham-fisted series of how amazing Christianity really is, guys. Trust me.
Yeah. There's some
Um,
really obvious things going on in that book series.
But that's one of the reasons that I like The Magician's Nephew is I feel it's one of the least ham-fisted ones. To be fair, he does get less ham-fisted as the books go on, and he concentrates more on building his world than the story of how Aslan is
Yeah,
Jesus.
because like Lion the Witch and the Wardrobe is all about like, oh, Aslan dies and then he comes back like fucking Jesus. But then
And
by the
that's
time
story, that's it. That's all you need to know. We
by
just
the
spoiled
time you
everything
reach
important.
well, yeah, that's basically it.
Okay, it's not like the book came out fucking forever ago.
Well, yeah, then there was
Spoiler
and then,
warning.
yeah, and then there's
No,
the Ice
the
Queen
three movies.
Satan, and she tempts Judas with chocolates that aren't that great in real life.
Yeah, right. I for a long time I was like, "Oh, Turkish delight must be amazing," and then like when I had it, I was like, "This
It's
is
fucking
garbage."
terrible.
Yeah, it's like garbage chocolate. It's like
Not great.
it's like gas station store
Why
chocolate.
I'm just sitting
Really,
here like, why did you give up everything with your family and shit for this?
really,
Holy shit, man, you're shallow.
the queen got one hell of a deal, honestly.
Yeah, no shit.
But like by the time you reach Voyage of the Dawn Treader, it's just like weird. It's gotten real weird. It's gotten like we've got a little bit away from the Bible, and it's like here's a puddle that turns you into King Midas. You know?
Is that the one with the fucking centipede sea serpent dragon thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think if I'm not mistaken, that's the
Anything
one with like
sea monster is definitely Dawn Treader.
that's the one with like the giant single foot people.
Oh yeah, fuck those
Yeah,
guys.
it was a little bit weird that book.
Well, I think that was kind of the point. The idea was like you go out to these islands and it's not like the rest of Narnia. And the idea, to be fair, that was also the book where one of the original four was going to America for college. And I think that's very thematic, is that this was a foreign land that was completely different from your homeland, whose customs, rituals, and normalities you don't really understand. And that was what was happening in the real life too. And again, they drew these things from real life. And at the time that C.S. Lewis wrote it,
Okay.
that was important because the world was becoming more connected.
Okay. I gotta say, British culture and American culture, not that different.
No, but different enough to be scary to people who are traveling between the two, especially at the time. And you also have to
Well, I
understand,
guess
It was more different then.
Yeah, because back then we
it's a little
didn't
more
like
different than it is
we
now.
really didn't like Britain as much.
That's true. We the wounds
Given
of
it's
the
gonna say given the
Revolutionary
whole
War
like
were
war
not,
and like
were not as
tossing their
healed.
tea in the harbor and shit, like yeah.
Well, I mean, we were over the Tea Party for the most part, but there was still some like there were other issues. For example, the fact that Britain practiced, I'm trying to remember what they called it, appeasement with Germany, and a lot of people in the United States blamed Britain for why Germany was able to do all the horrible things that they did. We wouldn't do that nowadays, but back then that was an actual genuine belief that people held. And as a result, they really disliked like the British way of being more lenient and trusting of people than America at the time was. Because America was, I don't know, America had been isolationist for a long time, and we kind of just naturally didn't trust people. And we thought that that was a more grown-up way to be, I think, is a...
Well, that's also because our entire country was founded on fuck you.
That's true. That is true.
All right.
But to get to the point,
but I'm sorry.
I'm
sorry. Let me correct that. Let me correct that. Our country was founded on fuck you religiously.
If you've read that, you'll understand what I'm talking about. But I like The Magician's Nephew because this story starts out in the real world with not an inkling Or I should explain a little more about how I read this. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe was not the first book that I read in the series, because when I decided I want to read C.S. Lewis's Narnia because it's an important series, I found a box set that was set up chronologically from book 1 to book the last one, which I think is 7. And
Book the last one.
I don't remember how many there are. Book the first one to book the last one. Oh, Magician's Nephew to the Final Battle. And I have read Magician's Nephew, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Pris Caspian, Voyage of the Dawn Treader, and the Boy and His Horse, but not any of the other ones. But my first one was Magician's Nephew. And the thing was, because I didn't read Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe first, I read this story first and then read Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I went into the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe understanding a lot of the background of that world that didn't exist when people, like most people, read it in or see it in release order rather than chronological order. So in The Magician's Nephew, essentially the magician is the main character's uncle, which makes sense.
Because he's the nephew, yeah.
So the nephew, or the main character, whose name I completely forget, by the way, he has this little girl who's a friend of his, who's like she's a servant girl. It very much, just so we're clear, this is way earlier England than Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe takes place during the events of World War II. The Magician's Nephew takes place prior to World War One, like post-Victorian era England. Like there's still a lot of Victorian influence in a lot of things, but they're starting to move away from like that value set and that aesthetic and such.
Yeah, that's a pretty big difference.
Yeah, it's a major difference, because there are things in that England that kind of don't, what's the word I'm looking for? They don't feature as heavily. So one of those being not so much slavery, but that there is a very rigid class system. So the magician is like upper middle class, and because of that, his whole family is upper middle class. And so the nephew is upper middle class, and he makes friends with this little girl who is a servant class person. And that's not considered okay, generally speaking, because she's less than you because she's a servant.
Yeah, which was a really stupid way to think about it.
It was, but that was a very real thing that existed in the time period. And of course, this little boy, who's the main character, he's like 10 and doesn't really understand why this is important or whatever. And understands even less when he actually has this whole adventure that happens. Him and the servant girl sneak in through a secret passage, which I think is through like the
it's in a wardrobe,
into his uncle's study, which is probably the worst mistake this poor child will ever make. His uncle's study, he finds a couple of rings, or he finds a bunch of rings, but they take a few of them. There are green rings and there are yellow rings. And they put on one of them. I don't remember which color does which. One of them takes you to like this sort of hub of worlds, and one of them takes you back, and one of them allows you to jump. The hub of worlds is like a forest with a bunch of ponds of water in it, and each pond is another world, though you can't tell what the world is that you're going into or anything. I mean, you can if you're experienced enough and you've gone through enough of the ponds. But one of the rings, I think it's the green ring, lets you jump into the pond, and the yellow ring brings you back to sort of the hub world. So it is very video gamey, which is funny because video games were not a thing when C.S. Lewis was alive. So what I think is interesting. So they go into one of these puddles or one of these ponds, and it takes them to a world that is awash in red light because the sun is red. And you see that this world is like empty, desolate, barren, and dying. There are the remains of cities. All the people in these cities, and this will sound really familiar to anyone who read Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, are all turned to stone.
Oh boy.
And
Uh-huh.
so you can see where this is going, can't you? The vast majority of the story takes place either in England or in this world that we're talking about right now. Only the final act takes place in Narnia. And this adventure has them go around the world trying to figure out what the fuck happened here. And they do get their answer because they eventually walk into a throne room and they're like, huh, this statue looks way more colorful and lively than everything else. And then she moves. And let me tell you, the Red Empress, as she is known, is way worse than the White Witch.
Yep.
Because the White Witch has a semblance of, this isn't my world, I'm not from here, I don't belong here, and I have to kind of, despite her being evil, she has a willingness to like, I wouldn't say that necessarily, but you can see how she tries to convince people that letting her rule is the right decision. There is none of that in the Scarlet Empress.
Simply demands
She
it.
is queen, and you will fucking live with it. She has no nicety whatsoever. And initially, she does ask questions of the children just because she has no clue. How did these people who are clearly not of my realm get here?
How long does that go on
eventually
before she just turns them to stone?
Oh no, she doesn't turn them to stone because, as it turns out, the rings also make you immune to most magics.
Ha!
So,
Convenient.
yeah, no
What?
shit. Because what happens is she's like, all right, so give me the rings then. And they're like, no, that's our only way to get home. And she goes, I don't give a fuck. Give it to me. I want to go to other worlds and conquer. And they're like, no. She goes, okay, fine, turn to stone. Snaps her fingers.
And it
Nothing
don't-
happens. She goes,
It broke
X
you.
fucking excuse me. So that starts a chase with this queen who's way bigger than them and frankly way faster than them. So it's if anyone's played Poppy Playtime,
Oh God!
it's a lot like running from Huggy Wuggy.
Oh no!
Like the way it's described in the book. Like they had to find these little areas where she can't get through or whatever, and still like they seem to lose her. And then they finally like, okay, they get out into an open area and they're like, let's put the yellow rings on and get the fuck out. And as they put the yellow rings on, she comes out of fucking nowhere, grabs the nephew's ankle, and gets zoinked out with them. And then,
yeah, that's not
yep.
good.
And then in panic, he tries to kick her off, falls back into England's pond, with her still holding onto his ankle.
Sounds fun.
At which point, he and her show up, and shortly thereafter, the little girl shows up too because she puts on her green ring, and she starts causing a ruckus in England, which doesn't work out that well for her because, as it turns out, magic doesn't work in the real world, which means she can't turn anyone to stone, and she now has a lot of cops with guns coming down on her.
Yeah, and she looks like a lost theater kid.
She really do. A really tall lost theater kid, but to be fair, this is old England. She didn't look that much out of place, but she definitely had more
if only she
fantasy
appeared
garb on.
If only she appeared in New York. What is this, some kind of fucking performance?
At which point, the uncle comes out and goes, "What the fuck?" Looks at his nephew, looks at the little girl. Y'all fucked around in my study, didn't you? And they're like, yeah. And he goes, he kind of has this grumbly like, I guess I have to fucking fix this situation now. He's a badass, by the way.
Of course he is.
Crap out of the fucking Scarlet Empress, to the point she like he beats the shit out of her. Basically, well, I mean, he doesn't. I shouldn't say that. That's not really how it's described in the book. He defeats her in combat. Just so we're clear, she is like preternaturally strong. So that is a problem that the cops are having with her. So he beats her in combat, grabs her hand, shoves the yellow ring on it, and lets go. But as she starts flying off into the air, she grabs the nephew again and zoinks him up with her. So now the magician and the magician looks at the servant girl and goes, "Well, put your ring on. You're coming with me, bitch." And they go out to try to save them. And when they show up in the world, the witch sees him come out of the pond and goes, "Fuck that! Not fighting that again." Jumps into a random pond, which happens to be Narnia. And
I think it's more like, "Oh bollocks! Well, come along, lass. Time for a dandy journey."
Yes, yeah, pretty much. I mean, to be fair, yeah, they very much talk more like that. But that's very much. I'm paraphrasing a lot of it. So they end up in this, and what I love about this is we now get to watch Narnia be created, because they jump into this pond, which is very shallow, and so the pond that the queen comes from was drying up. Like, there was very little water left in it. And when they actually come back out of the pond, it dries the rest of the way up. Because the idea is the only reason that these worlds exist is that there is still life there. And the queen was the last piece of life in that world. When she left it, it's gone. So, which is very, very dark. Also, by the way, the magician's nephew, I'm paraphrasing a lot of stuff. If you expect a nice, like, wholesome Christian journey, like Lion, the Ocean Wardrobe, you might want to pump your brakes a bit, because this is a dark as fuck book. It deals with some very dark shit. The main character, his whole motivation is that his mom has the Black Plague, and he's trying to find a cure for it, or bubonic plague, whatever the fuck it's called.
Yeah, but he wasn't born from a corpse, though.
Well, no, it's not Berserk dark, but it is dark compared to the rest of the Narnia series.
Compared to the rest of Narnia, yeah.
Compared to wow, Aslan.
Compared to, and I came back after 3 days and ride me. And,
don't quote the ancient magics to me, bitch. I was there when it was written.
Bitch.
Yeah, no, this book is very different. Oh, also, I should say,
Sassy Aslan.
So as she's leaving, as the Empress is leaving, she initially grabs onto a lamppost, and then realizes that's not going to hold her down. So she grabs the nephew in an attempt to make a final fuck you to the magician. And she's still holding onto the lamppost when she leaves, and she's still holding onto the lamppost and the nephew when she jumps into Narnia, which is why there's a lamppost in Narnia.
Wow.
Yeah, they go to that level of explaining the reasons why things. And the thing is, like, when they first jump in there, all that's there is her, the nephew, and the lamppost, and then of course the magician and the little girl, like 10 seconds later when he chases her down. And then they all kind of stop, because one thing the magician and the
Scarlet Empress.
The Scarlet Empress have in common is they are both really big on, like, discovering things and learning new knowledge. And to be fair, the only reason that the uncle fought with the Empress at all wasn't, I want to save my nephew. It was more like, you are causing me problems. He's very analytical and has no emotion kind of character. He's just sort of like, you're an issue. Issues need to die. That's more the thing. So, like, and the only real reason he cares to save his nephew is, my brother, who is a badass warrior in the war, will literally kill my ass if I don't.
Wow.
Yeah, that's...
Your father will murder me if I don't rescue you, so along we go.
It's not so much like I care about my nephew. It's more like I care that my brother doesn't beat the living shit out of me. So, so off we go. I gotta do this now. He's annoyed by a lot of it. But when he gets here, they realize, because the waters for this one were very dark in the pond. They get there and both the Scarlet Empress, which I think might have been called the Scarlet Queen, and she calls herself an Empress. But I think her official name in the canon is the Scarlet Queen. And the magician are both like, they come to the realization at about the same moment, oh, this is a new world that hasn't been formed yet. If we just like chill the fuck out for 10 minutes, we'll get to watch how worlds are made. So they both choose to do that. Which of course the kids are like, can we fix the real problem?
Hold on, children. The adults are talking.
Yeah, exactly. There's like a brief moment where it's like, hold on. Because it's really funny.
Hold on.
Like,
this is really cool. I want to see this.
Oh, no shit. The thing that's hilarious about it is it's like the Red Queen is like, or the Scarlet Queen is like, I believe this world hasn't been formed yet. And then the magician goes, it does appear that way. This is an unprecedented opportunity. At which point she goes, indeed it is. And then they're like, just sort of like, they talk very much like that in the book. So like they just sort of stop fighting each other for a minute to watch the world get formed. And the first thing you see is the silhouette of a lion as the first light of the world comes into place, and it roars. And as it roars, power ripples out and creates the world as it is.
So Aslan, motherfucker.
Yeah, I was just saying, in case anyone didn't put two and two together, the lion is Aslan. No fucking duh. So what happens is Narnia would have been a perfect paradise of good, but because they brought the Scarlet Queen in, it isn't. And the lion tells them that shortly thereafter. Basically,
well, you really fucked up my world, didn't you?
After everything gets formed and whatnot, the lion, I don't remember the exact order of events, but I remember they do continue fighting. The lion kind of picks up on this. At this point, by the way, the reason I'm saying the lion and not Aslan is because that's what they're calling it. They don't know who the fuck he is.
Yeah,
they don't have a name for him.
The book's not just like, oh, it's fucking Aslan, by the way, because it's not. That's really on the
we're seeing things from the nephew's point of view for the most part. So he's seeing this and going, it's a lion. I don't know what else to tell you. It's a lion that talks and roars worlds into existence. It's fucking terrifying. Like, which to be fair, yeah, it kind of is terrifying. And so I do remember the line. He kind of comes in and he's like, who the fuck are you people in my world? And then the Scarlet Queen takes advantage of the situation to sort of just be like, well, that's my cue, bye bitches, and runs off, which is a problem. She does not take the nephew with her, but the magician's kind of like, well, I came here to do what I came here to do, so bye. And Aslan's like, how about no, and just blocks his magic, so his rings don't work. And he's like, excuse me, and Aslan's like, no, you need to understand something. I just created a paradise, and you immediately brought ruin and destruction and terribleness into this world. You're fixing it. And the magician's like, no, I'm not. Go fuck yourself, basically.
And Aslan says,
I'm paraphrasing.
Aslan says, no, go fuck yourself.
No. So
no, Aslan instead goes, right me.
Aslan's like, well, you're not leaving until my problem's fixed. And the magician's like, well, I'm not fixing your problem, so I guess we're at an impasse then, huh? At which point the nephew, who still has rings and stuff, is like, he falls if I recall correctly, he like has a moment where he realizes I'm stuck here now, and my uncle doesn't give a shit, and he never gave a shit about me in the first place. Because the thing is, the uncle was supposed to be taking care of them because Mama was sick and Daddy was off in the war. But again, that's the only reason the uncle even gives a shit to take care of him is Daddy will kill him if he doesn't. So what ends up happening is the nephew, if I recall correctly, I don't remember if this is the case or not, but I seem to recall a scene about this. I remember Aslan's line being, "The world is not yet a day old, and yet evil has already entered it." That was the line that I remember him saying to them, to like tell them, "This is your responsibility. Now you have to fix it." And I think the nephew like has a legitimate sit down cry fest because he realizes I'm stuck here. I'm never going home because of my stubborn ass uncle. My mom is dying and I have no way to save her. And the whole fucking point of me going into my uncle's study was because I thought he might have an answer to that original problem. And now all I've done is create more problems. And Aslan hears the child crying and he says something like, "Your mother is sick." He asks like, "Is your..." It's like, you know, "Is your mother sick? Is that what you're saying?" And he's like, "Yeah, she's dying. She's sick of a plague. And there's nothing I can do to save her, and now I'm trapped here." And so Aslan kind of gives him a thoughtful look for a minute and then says, "Tell you what, I'll make an exception for you.
Yeah,
But
I'll send you home without your itchy bitch of an uncle."
No. He says, "I'll make an exception for you. But if you want to save your mother, this is what you'll have to do. There is a tree that blooms in a garden far to the east that has silver fruit. And if you go and take the silver pears from the tree and have your mother eat them, it will cure any ailment. But know this, if you choose to do that, that is an incredibly dangerous journey to undertake. Because there are guardians of that garden, and they will not look kindly on your invasion."
Well, of course there are. Yeah, I can't do anything about it. I just made the world.
No, Aslan's like, "There's nothing I can do about it because I did not anticipate your arrival. And because of that, when I created these, this is how I made them, and I can't undo it. So you will be seen as an invader, an outsider, and you will be attacked. And there's nothing I can do about that."
Just go and get the fruit for him.
Like, I know, like, there's that too. There's like, well, you know, you're fucking powerful. Why don't you just go get the fruit?
But it's not about me getting you the fruit. It's about you getting yourself the fruit.
I believe Aslan's reason was, "I am not taking my eyes off your dumbass uncle." Which, you know,
fair.
So him and the little girl go off to get the fruit, and they find that the Scarlet Queen already found the fruit garden, killed the guardians, and has stuffed herself to the brim with the fruit, which is why she's not as powerful and why all of her powers have to do with ice now instead of the only power she retains.
Oh my god, this fruit's fucking amazing.
Oh, yeah, actually, believe it or not, she's literally sitting there like bloated with too much of the fruit, completely unable to fight them, by the way. Which is like, I thought was hilarious.
Guys, if you had some of this fucking fruit, it's great.
She's very much like, what do they call it? Like Not the Brave from Critical Role. "Have you guys tried some of this fruit? It's amazing." Like, she like, well, to be fair, she immediately recognizes, "Oh, these are enemies. I cannot be here," and fucks off promptly. But it's funny,
shit!
she can still fuck off properly.
God. Listen, kids, this isn't what it looks like. I'm just gonna go.
Yeah.
You've eaten all the fruit, you fucking bitch.
But of course, she runs away, and then the kids come back with the fruit. I know that there's more detail to this story. There is a thing that happens with the White Witch and everything, and there's a reason. There's like a sort of battle between the White Witch and, well, first of all, she becomes the White Witch, which is because Aslan casts, and Aslan is very clear about this, that this is the last great spell I will have the capacity to do. Which is why Aslan is powerful, but you don't see him do like amazing magic. And that last final great spell, it turns her into the White Witch, and also it's the thing that makes the prophecy about her killing him and him coming back 3 days later. Which will give him the power to defeat her.
Bro, he cast Tears of Denial.
Yeah, something like that. So essentially, but the way they talk about it is it changes the very fabric of the world, so that this reality, this result, is an inevitability, and nothing that is done can cause it not to happen.
Fantastic.
And that is and he makes it clear, this is the last great magic I will have the capacity to grant this world. Like, this is the last of the creator power that I'm using. After this, I will no longer have the ability to do this. They also explain, I'm going to jump like jarringly right now, because there is a sort of final battle between, I say final battle, there is a final battle from the book's point of view between Aslan and the witch, where the witch is trying to prevent this spell from being cast. Obviously she fails at it, but
Clearly.
and part of that spell is why she does not realize that killing him will cause it to happen, which they also explained it in this book, because obviously she knows what the spell he's trying to cast is, which is why she's trying to prevent it. So once the spell is cast, she forgets that part of the spell. And this is also
modify
part of the
memory.
old magics. This is also part of the old
Jedi
magics
mind
that they
trick.
talk about, or the deep magics. Do not cite the deep magics to me. I was there when it was written. Not only was he there when it was written, he's the motherfucker who wrote them. So
I'm C.S. Lewis now.
to sort of abridge the rest of the book, the uncle kind of just sits there uselessly because he wants to be a stubborn asshole, and they do eventually convince
I've
Aslan
my pride to consider, you know.
Well, see, so the other thing is, like, the two kids help in the final battle against the witch, and like, since the nephew's in the middle of that and the witch is messing with him, the uncle kind of, at one point, the uncle's kind of like, fine, and he casts a spell and, like, puts the witch off balance to ruin what she's doing, and that allows Aslan to kind of do his thing and win. And at that point, Aslan considers his debt paid well enough, they can go home.
All right, you fucking did something, sure.
Now fuck off.
Basically, yeah. Also, Aslan like literally closes the pool. No one can go to Narnia that way ever again.
Yeah, makes sense.
Which, you know, fair. The literal, like, devil came from that pool. Like, just so we're clear, this book also clarifies really, really clearly that the White Witch is the devil of that world. She's not of that world, but she is the Satan, for lack of a better term, of that world. And she would not have existed in that world if it weren't for these interlopers, which is why he closes off the pool. He makes it so that even the rings cannot allow you to travel there. In fact, he makes the rings useless, although I don't remember how he does that. And the uncle's kind of like, well, that experiment shot, on to the next one. Come on, Morty, we got another adventure to go do.
Yeah, except Morty goes, nah, I'm gonna go help my sick
No,
mom.
fuck
Yeah.
off.
Exactly. Morty's like, nah, screw you, bitch. So,
World War One.
he does
Morty.
go get his sick mom cured and everything.
World War
Here's
One
the thing.
Morty.
We have world wars to start, Morty. Let's go. What I remember is they go home. He feeds the pear to his mother. He takes the seeds from the pear and he takes the seed from the pear and he plants a tree. And the thing about these trees is like they are very specific to Narnia generally, and they're like they're very similar to like they're like a big divine tree kind of thing, and they bear these silver fruits. Well, I don't know, they never explain whether or not the tree actually bears fruit that I recall, or whether he used it for anything. First of all, the magician's nephew is the old man that the four go to see in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and the
Of
wardrobe
course.
is made from the wood of the tree he planted, that at this point has been long
And
dead.
that's the reason they go to Narnia from the wardrobe.
And I love this book because it explains everything, and I like that.
It does.
That's something I like
I gotta say
as
though,
a reader.
based on that book, Aslan probably be like, God damn it, why are there more of you in my world?
Yeah.
Me, damn it.
Yeah. Where the hell
Me,
did you
damn it,
come
why
from?
more?
I thought I
Well,
closed that
actually-
hole.
Actually, to be fair, Travelers from Another World are part of the prophecy he wrote into being, because if we could be blunt, he realized that the powers of this world cannot permanently be rid of the witch because she's from another world. That there's some kind of wonky magic rules that have to do with otherworlders. Not like you can't die in another world, but you have to die a very specific way. And even if you die, your soul's kind of trapped there because you can't go to your world's afterlife because you're not connected to it. Which is why after the white witch dies, she can still come back in the mirror and all that shit and try to convince Edmund once again to help her.
And how does
Her
that?
soul
How
has
does
moved on.
how does that go?
Edmund tells her to fuck the hell right off.
I imagine, like, yeah, you know, those Turkish delights weren't actually that good. Fuck off.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, he's like 18 now, so he's like,
Yeah, he's
no,
grown up.
I'm not a little kid that you're gonna convince with candy to help.
The white witch is like, oh, I can manipulate this small child. I've done it once before. I can do it again. And then he's like, no, like,
No, I've
Go
manipulated you enough to know this will not end well for me or anyone I care about.
yeah.
So that's not gonna be a thing.
She's like, shit, I was really banking on that.
He kind of was. That's true. So they actually do show that in the Prince Caspian movie, the more recent one, that she's still
I
sort of
do
around.
actually remember the mirror. Yeah. Come to think of it.
There's a mirror, and she tries to tempt Peter.
Yeah.
Because she goes to tempt Edmund, and Edmund's like, "Fuck off." And then she goes to tempt.
Yeah,
Weren't
she
they
goes to
having, like
tempt-
a wedding or
and
something.
it's working for a minute, and then Edmund just straight up breaks. her and says,
Yeah,
fuck that
Edmund's like, bruh, don't fuck with my ex, dude. He's like, you don't want any of that, trust me.
Edmund. It's such a funny name.
He's like, chlamydia? Yeah.
it's, wow. Topical, right?
Topical. As in, like, the
But
only
yeah,
you'll need to treat
so
your
like
chlamydia.
that's my favorite. To be fair, I also really want to talk about the Garth Nix Keys to the Kingdom series, but I think at this point we've rattled on long enough that
We're
that's
at
probably not
2.5 hours, so, you know, maybe that could be its own.
We could go for another 30 minutes talking.
I mean,
about
I could talk
Keys to the
about
Kingdom.
Narnia as its own thing. And a
We
whole
could,
episode
but
on nothing
yeah.
but Narnia.
We could also
But,
talk about Keys to the... Because I think they're both the same amount of books, right? It's like 7 books.
Yeah,
in each
because it's
series.
7
I
days a
think so.
week.
Yeah.
Mr. Monday, Sir Thursday. Turbulent
Uh,
Tuesday, Drowned Wednesday.
It's
I don't
not. It's
remember.
not Turbulent
Taco
Tuesday.
Tuesday. Taco
It's
Tuesday.
Taco Tuesday.
Yeah.
Taco Tuesday. Definitely Taco Tuesday.
Definitely Taco Tuesday. But yeah, so that's my favorite book out of the Narnia series because I think it's really, really good. It's really amazing. And of course, my personal experience, since I hadn't read Lion the Witch in the Wardrobe yet, when I did read Lion the Witch in the Wardrobe, I was like, this is the book where all the loose ends get tied up. That's amazing. And I had an entirely different experience with it than other folks. And I was like genuinely surprised to find out that most people who have experienced Narnia have experienced it not through the books but through the movies, and have no fucking idea about the events of the Magician's Nephew. They have no idea where the tree comes from, why it's or where the wardrobe comes from, what it's made out of, why it's there, why the White Witch is there. They have no idea why the prophecy was so important or any of this other stuff. And I'm like, you don't know anything. And I'll go and tell them all of this, and they'll be like, where did you get that? The Magician's Nephew, the prequel to Lion the Witch in the Wardrobe, which tells you everything about Narnia and how it was created.
I also got to say,
there's a book that does that?
Yeah, I also got to say, if there's a book that's a prequel to a very popular series, Dave has read it. Because Silmarillion, yeah, you bet.
To be honest, you're right. And, well, actually, there are some book series that I just want.
You're right, and I'm not sorry.
I'm not sorry.
It gives me knowledge.
I love having the explanation for why shit is the way it is. If you have a universe, I want to know how your universe works, why it works, what makes it tick. I want to know the answers to those questions. And I love it when I get a book that tells me all of that.
Okay, bud.
This guy will actually read. Imagine that.
So that's my take on it. That's why The Magician's Nephew is my favorite Narnia book. Because it's the prequel that explains everything, and nobody's read it. So I love kind of having knowledge that no one else has. Now everyone has it, because I just told you the story.
Well, pretty much the story, yeah. Your interpretation of the story.
Here's the thing: you really should read it because even as a standalone book, it's really good. It's really well written. Nobody curses and swears. Well, I mean, they do in Old English. They say bloody a lot.
Bloody hell!
Bloody hell!
Bloody hell!
I was gonna say no. It's more like, I bloody told you not to mess around in my study, didn't I? Kind of thing.
Well, that's not
like the uncle is
bloody hell! I told you not to faff about in my study.
Faff about.
The worst curse word in the entire book is he does refer one time to the Scarlet Queen as a bitch.
You cold bitch!
But he does it in that very old English way, like that. You know how normally we'd be like, fucking bitch, or something like that today? It's not like that.
The
in
New
Old
York
English,
fucking bitch!
It's like literal, it's like a literal, I am calling you a dog, woman. That is what he means by that. He is literally calling her a dog. Which is what sets her off, of course, to be like, well, fuck you, asshole, and fight him. And then, of course, just utterly fails to do that effectively. Because the magician is a badass, and
I gotta know, though, do the kids, the nephew and the random servant girl, have any ties at all to the rest of the Narnia series?
Yeah,
I think
magician.
I told you the nephew is the old man.
Yeah, the nephew
that owns the mansion
okay.
that they go to live in.
What about
I have no
the girl?
idea what happens with the servant girl. Because they don't talk. So here's something that I think, and this is going to really feed into Steve or Beard's thing with romance. There is not an ounce of romance between those two in the entire book, and it's still amazing.
Well, yeah. You don't have to have romance. It's just a thing that people are like, everybody loves romance. Let's throw that in our book.
Kids who end up in a situation together and do best by each other as they can.
To be fair,
go their separate ways when it's over.
To be fair,
no romance.
That's
She's genuinely happy for him.
To be fair,
he saves his mom.
That's kind of what happens in the first of the Dormia books, and then the second one, they're like,
not the second one.
The second one, they're like, they got older and got hormones, and then realized that the other person was the other gender, and they freaked out a little bit.
Well, that's a little normal, though.
Yeah, I maybe didn't do such a good job of explaining it, but it wasn't like
it wasn't a one-sided. Like, oh my god, I have a boner now.
Yeah, it really wasn't. It really wasn't quite like that.
Suddenly, Alfonso was just like, "Oh my god, boner."
It's one of those. No, it's more like he hasn't seen this girl in like 2 or 3 years, and then when he sees her, he's like, "Oh, she's really pretty," and I didn't know that I could feel that way.
And she also has feelings.
Yeah,
like this
she's like, "Oh, he's really handsome," and I didn't know that I could feel that way.
Yeah.
That's sort of how it is.
Honestly, that's some shit real people go through. So
yeah, like relatable. That the romance section of it is not that important.
But yeah, that's definitely there's no romance between the little boy and the little girl. They're just friends who get thrown into this journey together. Or I shouldn't even say necessarily. I think at the beginning he wouldn't have called her a friend because she was a servant girl. But once they get stuck in this situation together, I don't remember what initially causes them to be sort of in the air
hits
duct.
the fan, and now all of a sudden you want to be my fucking friend, huh?
Well, it's not that he had a personal issue with her, or that he thought she was less than him or anything. There wasn't any of that before. It's just that he understood Mom and Dad would not be happy with me, and Uncle definitely wouldn't be happy with me for fraternizing with the servant girl. So he just sort of, not that he doesn't talk to her at all or anything, but she's just sort of there. And I don't remember the situation that initially gets them into the like air duct together or whatever. I think he finds it or she finds it and he catches her and then he follows her in or something like that. Some ridiculous kids book setup like that. And ultimately that's where they end up being like, oh hey, and they end up in the dude's study and they're like, I wonder what these rings do. And then the little girl's like, I wouldn't mess with your uncle's stuff if I were you. Because she has some inkling that what the uncle does is not exactly ethical.
Was it the severed hands and jars on the shelf? I don't know.
No, he doesn't have anything like that. But there are some weird things in his study. Like, I didn't talk about it, but when they first go into his study, there are a few weird things that definitely make it clear this guy isn't exactly a moral person. So she's kind of put off by this, and she's like, maybe we shouldn't be in here messing with this shit. And he's like, nah, I want to know what these rings do. And then
yo, what the fuck is this fucking magic ring, dude? I really want to check out this fucking magic ring, dude.
Here's the thing. She's not convinced that anything he does has anything to do with magic, but he is. Because, well, it's his uncle, and he knows at least a little bit of what his uncle's doing. And his uncle's talked a little bit about it, not, like, in any detail. But there is some semblance of, like, oh, what I'm doing is magical, or what I'm doing will be magical one day. And so he's like, oh, I want to know what real magic's like. And then this little girl is looking at some of the other stuff and going, I think your uncle's into magic. And then they put on the rings and she goes, I stand very corrected. Let's go home now. Now I want to see what's in this pool.
What?
That's kind of how it all starts, if I recall correctly.
I looked this up on the wiki because I was curious about it. Yes, there's a wiki. Don't be surprised by that.
I'm not surprised by the wiki.
I'm not surprised.
Apparently, originally, The Magician's Nephew was published as the 6th book in the series.
Ah.
But well, in the newer republishings or reprintings, it's been rearranged to be the 1st book in the series because chronologically it is.
Well, yeah, that's what I was saying earlier. It's chronologically the 1st book. That makes sense, because the 7th book is the final battle.
The way they describe this. Narnian Year 0.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
actually,
correct, but
Narnia
like,
year minus
but like,
something until Aslan.
just you're in some nerdy shit when they start talking about year 0.
Yup.
That is true.
Yup.
But yeah, like I don't know, it's my favorite book. There's a lot of interesting things in it. I think it's really well written. It explains so much about the Narnia universe as a whole. Like if there's any questions you have that you're like, why is this a thing in Narnia? Read The Magician's Nephew. You'll get an answer. I did not cover everything because it's a thick ass boy of a book, but I think The Magician's Nephew was kind of C.S. Lewis's like book where he just sort of explained his universe a lot.
If I can
like how it
add a little quick tidbit to that. Apparently, there's a group of people called the Seven Friends of Narnia, which I think we learn about in Prince Caspian. No, it's not. No, because okay,
the silver chair.
The Seven Friends of Narnia.
It's a pretty cool chair.
Edmund, Peter, Lucy, Eustace, Jill, and then Diggory and Polly, which is the characters.
Which I assume are the protagonists from the various books.
Yeah, Diggory and Polly are from Magician's Nephew.
So that would be the nephew and the girl, the servant girl.
But
I find that interesting that Aslan named them Friends of Narnia after that whole debacle. I mean, I guess
yeah, well, to be fair, they kind of weren't really trying to fuck with shit. They were just kind of there.
Yeah, but their actions up to that point is what led to the White Witch being there.
We should talk about this in its own episode because I've started to go down a rabbit hole now, and I'm like, wait.
Yeah.
Who the fuck is King Tyrion, and when does he appear at dinner with? Yeah, we should. We should talk about this in its own episode for sure. But I think for now, since we're at about almost 3 hours, we should say goodbye. This has been the tutorial.
Tutorial to our favorite books.
Yeah.
And in my case, it was a lot of books.
If you learned something, let us know down in the comments below.
Probably you did learn something. If you're a fan of Narnia, you definitely learned something.
You probably did learn that there's actually more than books that you thought there were.
Yes.
I can speak.
I learned the actual plot of Berserk because I didn't actually know that before.
Well, you learned the plot of the first part of it. That goes to
the first part, and I don't know about that one.
After that.
Anyway.
Seriously, you think I'm joking? It fucking expands.
Oh, no, I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it at all.
Manga and anime tend to do that.
But anyways, we've
here's a story of 13 episodes to here's a series that's been going on for almost 1,000 episodes. One Piece is.
Yeah, we've rambled on for long enough. Don't get into the One Piece rabbit hole. Everybody say goodbye now.
Bye-bye.